The fog was already rolling in when Sophia Bennett made the worst mistake of her career. Not the billion-dollar deal she was about to lose, but the man in the faded airport jacket she was about to humiliate. In 60 seconds, she would destroy him in front of everyone. In 60 minutes, she would need him to save her life. In 60 days, she would understand that the people we dismiss often carry the wisdom we desperately need. This is a story about pride, redemption, and the dangerous roads we take when we refuse to listen. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Cedar Hollow Regional Airport's Operations Center hummed with the same tired frequency they'd maintained for the past 15 years. Ethan Brooks sat at his desk, eyes fixed on 3 different weather monitors, while his right hand absently signed off on fuel delivery reports. His left hand rested on the shoulder of his daughter, Maya, who sat cross-legged on the floor beside his chair, whispering secrets to her stuffed rabbit. "The bunny says she's hungry," Maya announced, looking up at her father with those eyes. Her mother's eyes, the ones that still caught him off guard, even after 3 years. "The bunny just had goldfish crackers 20 minutes ago," Ethan replied without looking away from the weather radar. "Tell her she's going to turn into a goldfish." "Bunnies can't turn into fish, Daddy. That's not science." "You sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure I saw it happen once." Maya giggled, then returned to her quiet conversation with the rabbit. Ethan allowed himself a small smile before his attention snapped back to the monitor. The smile disappeared. The weather pattern developing over the valley wasn't just concerning, it was textbook dangerous. He'd seen this exact setup twice before in his career. Once in Seattle, when he'd been a junior operations supervisor for Pacific Airways, back when he wore tailored shirts instead of company-issued jackets with someone else's name stitched on the pocket. The second time had been here, 2 years ago, 3 weeks after he had taken this job, the kind of job people with his resume didn't usually accept, unless life had beaten them into a corner and forced them to choose. He zoomed in on the satellite imagery. Cold air mass dropping down from Canada, warm moisture pushing up from the Gulf, and Cedar Hollow sitting right in the convergence zone like a target. The valley geography would trap everything, compress it, turn it into a visibility nightmare. Ethan pulled up the evening flight schedule. Most of the commercial traffic had already departed or diverted. But there was one private charter scheduled for Wheels Up at 7:45 p.m. Filed flight plan to Denver, corporate registration, priority handling requested. He checked his watch. 7:23 p.m. "Mr. Brooks?" The voice crackled through his radio. It was Tommy Chen, one of the ramp coordinators. "The Denver charter just pulled up to the FBO. Passengers are boarding now. They're asking about expedited clearance." Ethan pressed the transmit button. "Tell them to hold. I need to check something." He pulled up the meta reports, cross-referenced them with the no AA warnings, then looked at the live camera feeds from the runway. The fog wasn't visible yet, but it would be. Physics didn't negotiate. "Daddy, why do you look worried?" Ethan glanced down at Maya. 6 years old, and she could already read him better than most adults. That's what happened when you were someone's entire world. "Just checking on something, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But Maya's eyebrows pulled together in that expression that meant she didn't believe him and wasn't going to let it go. Before she could press the issue, his phone buzzed. Text from Daniel Mercer, the captain he'd worked with a dozen times over the past year. "You seeing this weather? I'm scheduled for that Denver run. What's your read?" Ethan typed back quickly. "Valley fog forming, could get ugly fast. You seeing the same pattern I am?" 3 dots appeared, then, "Yeah, gives me a bad feeling. These passengers are pushing hard, though. Executive team, apparently. Big deal in Denver." "How big?" "Big enough that they've called my dispatcher twice already." Ethan looked at the weather data again, then at Maya, then at the empty coffee cup on his desk that had been full an hour ago. He was 32 years old, worked a job that paid $47,000 a year, and went home every night to an apartment where his daughter's artwork covered the refrigerator and his own dinner usually came from the freezer section. He had no authority to stop anyone from flying. He was a ground operations coordinator, the guy who made sure the fuel trucks showed up on time and the luggage carts didn't crash into each other. But he'd also spent 8 years working his way up through airline operations, had held certifications that now sat in a box in his closet, and possessed the kind of pattern recognition that came from actually understanding how weather systems killed people. He stood up. Maya, grab your bunny. We're going to take a walk. Where? Just over to the terminal. I need to talk to someone. Maya scrambled to her feet, clutching the rabbit against her chest. Ethan locked his computer screen, grabbed his radio, and headed out of the operations center. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaning solution and old carpet. Through the windows, he could see the lights of the private aviation terminal across the ramp, a much nicer building than the one he worked in, all glass and modern architecture, the kind of place where people landed in jets that cost more than every house on Ethan's street combined. The evening air hit them as they stepped outside. Cold, but not unbearable. More importantly, clear. For now. Why are we walking so fast? Maya asked, jogging to keep up with his longer strides. Because I need to catch someone before they make a mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind that's hard to fix later. They crossed the ramp, and Ethan pushed through the glass doors into the private terminal. Immediately, the atmosphere changed. Leather furniture, ambient lighting, a coffee station with one of those Italian espresso machines that probably cost more than his monthly rent. And standing near the window overlooking the aircraft parking area, a group of 5 people in business attire, all focused on a woman in her early 30s who was gesturing emphatically while staring at her phone. I don't care what their concerns are, the woman was saying, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. We have a closing scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. If we're not in that conference room when the lawyers arrive, we lose everything. Everything. Do you understand what that means? The man she was talking to, mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of tan that came from vacation homes in places with better weather, nodded rapidly. I understand, Sophia. I'm just saying that if the pilot has weather concerns, then he can file whatever alternate routing he needs, but we are taking off tonight. Ethan approached slowly, Maya's hand in his. The group didn't notice him at first. He waited for a break in the conversation, then cleared his throat. Excuse me. 5 pairs of eyes turned toward him. The woman, Sophia, apparently, looked him up and down in about 2 seconds, her gaze landing on his work jacket, then Maya, then dismissing both of them as irrelevant. The passenger lounge is on the other side of the building, she said, already turning back to her phone. I'm not a passenger, Ethan replied evenly. I'm with ground operations. I wanted to talk to you about your flight to Denver. Sophia's fingers stopped moving across her phone screen. She looked at him again, this time with a mixture of irritation and confusion. Ground operations, she repeated, as if testing whether the words made sense together. You mean like baggage handling? Among other things, I coordinate safety operations for the airport. One of the men in the group, younger, maybe late 20s, with the kind of haircut that required product and effort, smirked. Since when do baggage handlers give flight advice? Ethan felt Maya's hand tighten around his fingers. She might not understand the words, but she understood the tone. He squeezed back gently, a silent message. It's okay. I'm not giving advice, Ethan said calmly. I'm providing information. There's a weather system moving into the valley that's going to create dangerous fog conditions within the next 30 to 45 minutes. I've been monitoring it for the past 2 hours, and I wanted to make sure your pilot was aware of the situation before you depart. Sophia's expression shifted from irritation to something closer to disbelief. Are you serious right now? Yes, ma'am. You, she gestured at him, at Maya, at the general situation. You walked over here with your daughter to tell me not to fly because you think there might be fog. Not might be, will be. And I'm not telling you not to fly. I'm telling you that conditions are going to deteriorate rapidly, and your departure window is closing faster than you probably realize. The smirking man laughed outright. Oh, this is perfect. Sophia, are you hearing this? This guy. I hear it, Marcus. Sophia stepped closer to Ethan, her phone now at her side, her full attention locked on him in a way that felt like being examined under a microscope. Let me make sure I understand. You work here, at this airport, doing what exactly? Ground operations coordination. Right. Ground operations. And you have what kind of meteorology certification? What's your background in aviation weather forecasting? Ethan could feel the trap being set. He could see exactly where this was going. But the weather data didn't care about social dynamics or corporate hierarchies, and people died when pride overruled physics. I spent 8 years in airline operations, he said quietly. I've held certifications for operations control, dispatch coordination, and weather systems analysis. I've worked in Seattle, Portland, and Minneapolis. I understand how valley fog forms, and I understand how quickly it can turn a routine departure into a critical situation. Had certifications, Sophia repeated, catching the past tense like a lawyer catching a witness in a lie. But not anymore? Not currently active, no. So you used to be qualified, but now you're not. You used to have an important job, but now you coordinate baggage carts. And you think, what? That you're still qualified to override the judgment of our pilot? Who, by the way, has 15,000 flight hours and 30 years of experience. I'm not trying to override anyone's judgment. I'm providing information. No. Sophia's voice went cold. You're trying to feel important. You're standing here in your little airport jacket with your daughter as a prop, trying to insert yourself into something that's none of your business because it makes you feel like you still matter. The words landed like physical blows. Ethan felt Maya's hand grip his so tightly it hurt. Marcus laughed again. Jesus, Sophia, don't hold back. But Sophia wasn't done. I have $1 billion acquisition closing tomorrow morning. $1 billion. My entire career depends on being in Denver before 9 a.m. And you want me to delay or cancel because you have a feeling about the weather? You want me to trust your expertise over our pilot's expertise, even though you don't even work in aviation anymore? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Use your words. Explain to me why I should listen to someone who gave up their career to become, what was it? Ground operations coordinator? Ethan could feel something cracking inside his chest, could feel the old anger trying to surface. The anger that came from people who had no idea what sacrifice looked like, who had never had to choose between ambition and being present when their child woke up crying because she couldn't remember her mother's voice anymore. But he didn't let it surface, because that's what 3 years of single parenthood had taught him. Control, patience, the ability to absorb hits without swinging back. I didn't give up my career, he said quietly, his voice steady, even though his hands wanted to shake. I chose my daughter, and I would make that choice every single day for the rest of my life. Maya looked up at him, and he saw tears starting to form in her eyes. Not because she understood the conversation, but because she understood that someone was hurting her daddy, and she didn't know how to make it stop. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw something flicker across her face. Maybe a moment of recognition that she'd gone too far. Maybe just annoyance that he wasn't backing down. Then she turned to Marcus. Make sure the pilot knows we want wheels up in the next 20 minutes. I don't care if he has to file for an immediate departure. Marcus nodded and pulled out his phone. Sophia looked back at Ethan. Thank you for your concern, but I think we'll rely on actual current professionals rather than former ones. Have a nice evening. She dismissed him with a turn of her shoulder, and the conversation was over. Ethan stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of Maya's hand in his, feeling the eyes of the other executives on him, some amused, some uncomfortable, all of them watching to see what the dismissed man in the airport jacket would do next. He did what he always did when the world tried to make him feel small. He focused on what mattered. Come on, Maya, he said softly. Let's go. They walked back across the ramp in silence. The air had changed in the minutes they'd been inside. Cooler now, with a dampness that wasn't there before. The first whispers of fog were forming in the low spots of the runway, visible only if you knew what to look for. Maya didn't say anything until they were back inside the operations center. Then, sitting back down on the floor with her rabbit, she looked up at her father with those eyes that saw everything. That lady was mean. Yeah, Ethan agreed, settling back into his chair. She was. Why was she so mean? Because she's scared. And sometimes when people are scared, they get mean to anyone who makes them feel more scared. Were you trying to make her scared? No, sweetheart. I was trying to keep her safe. Maya thought about this for a moment, her face serious. The bunny says that lady is going to feel bad later. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. The bunny is very wise. He turned back to his monitors, tracking the weather system that was now accelerating its timeline. The fog would be here in 20 minutes, maybe less. And somewhere across the ramp, Sophia Bennett and her executive team were boarding a jet that would try to outrun physics. His phone buzzed. Captain Mercer again, passengers insisting on immediate departure. I've got concerns, but they're threatening to call my company if I delay. What's your latest read on conditions? Ethan looked at the satellite data, at the meta reports, at the camera feeds showing fog now clearly visible on the eastern edge of the runway. He typed back, "Fog is forming faster than projected. Visibility dropping rapidly. RVR will be below minimums in 15 to 20 minutes. If you're going to depart, it needs to be now. If you wait, you'll be stuck here." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "That's what I thought. Thanks for the straight answer. I'll make the call." Ethan set down his phone and picked up his radio, switching to the frequency he knew the tower used for ground communications. "Cedar Hollow ground operations." "Go ahead, operations. Be advised, valley fog forming on eastern sections. Recommend updating all traffic on current visibility trends." "Copy that, operations. We're watching it. Got that Denver charter requesting taxi now. Gonna be a close call on whether they beat the fog." Ethan didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He'd provided the information, given the warning, done everything he was qualified and authorized to do. What happened next was out of his hands. Except it wasn't. Not really. Because 10 minutes later, as Maya was drawing pictures on the back of old fuel requisition forms, Ethan's radio crackled to life with a transmission that made his blood run cold. "Cedar Hollow Tower, Cherokee 87 Juliet, declaring emergency. We've got a bird strike on departure, losing power on number 1 engine, requesting immediate return to field." That wasn't the Denver charter. That was a small private aircraft that had departed 15 minutes ago, before the fog had closed in. And now it was coming back to a runway that was rapidly disappearing into white. Ethan was on his feet before he realized he was moving. "Maya, stay right here. Don't move, okay?" "Daddy, I'll be right back. I promise. Just stay here with the bunny." He burst out of the operations center and ran toward the tower access stairs. The airport manager, Richard Holloway, was already on the radio coordinating the emergency response. "Fire crews are rolling now. Cherokee 87 Juliet. Be advised, visibility on the field is rapidly deteriorating. Current RVR less than 2,400 feet and dropping." Ethan reached the tower cab just as the pilot's voice came back, tight with stress. "Tower Cherokee 87 Juliet. I'm showing 1,800 feet on the altimeter. How far out am I?" Richard looked at his scope. 6 miles to the northwest. Turn heading 170 to intercept the ILS for runway 17. Ethan stepped up beside the tower supervisor, a woman named Sandra Price, who'd been working this facility since before he was born. She glanced at him. No questions about why he was there. She knew. "How's it looking?" Ethan asked quietly. "Not great. They're single engine now, running an approach in fog that's getting worse by the minute. If they don't get on the ground in the next few minutes—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Through the tower windows, the fog had transformed the airport into something from another world. Shapes and lights bleeding into white. Distances impossible to judge. The runway barely visible even from the tower's elevated position. "Cherokee 87 Juliet, you're 3 miles from the outer marker. Maintain heading, maintain 2,500 feet until intercepting the glide slope." The radio clicked. "Tower, we're not seeing anything. It's all white out here." Sandra's hand tightened on her radio. "Cherokee 87 Juliet, trust your instruments. The approach is good. You're on course." Ethan watched the radar scope, tracking the little blip representing an aircraft with 3 people on board trying to thread a needle in zero visibility. He thought about Sophia Bennett, sitting on her corporate jet across the field, probably annoyed about the delay this emergency was causing. He thought about what she'd said. "You want to feel important. You want to feel like you still matter." Maybe she was right. Maybe that's exactly what he wanted. Or maybe he just understood that in aviation, there were only 2 kinds of people: those who respected the machinery of cause and effect, and those who became statistics. "Cherokee 87 Juliet, you're at the marker. Descend to 1,800 feet. Maintain heading 170. Descending to 1,800. The fog pressed against the tower windows like something alive. Ethan could see the emergency vehicles staged near the runway, their lights creating useless halos in the white. Somewhere out there, falling through that same white, was a damaged aircraft running on 1 engine in hope. Sandra keyed her radio again. "Cherokee 87 Juliet, you're 2 miles from the threshold. Landing gear should be down, full flaps. You're slightly right of centerline. Turn left heading 165. Left to 165, gear is down." 1 mile. 3/4. Half a mile. And then, like a ghost materializing from nothing, Ethan saw the landing lights emerge from the fog. Just 2 points of brightness at first, then the outline of the aircraft. Too high, drifting right. "He's off course," Sandra said quietly, her voice controlled but tight. "Cherokee 87 Juliet, you're right of center line and high on the glide slope. Correct left and increase descent rate." The aircraft's nose dropped, the left wing dipped, and for a moment it looked like the pilot was going to over-control and pancake into the ground. Ethan's hands gripped the edge of the console. Then the Cherokee leveled out, dropped the last 50 feet, and hit the runway hard. Too hard, but down. The landing gear absorbed the impact. The aircraft bounced once, settled, and the pilot immediately applied brakes and reverse thrust on the one working engine. The aircraft slowed, disappeared into the fog before they could see it stop. Sandra's radio clicked. "Tower, Cherokee 87 Juliet is down safe. We're clear of the active." The tower cab released a collective breath. Richard turned to Sandra. "Close the runway. Nothing else moves until this fog clears." She nodded and began making the necessary transmissions. "All aircraft on Cedar Hollow frequency. Be advised runway 1735 is now closed due to fog and emergency operations. Repeat, field is closed to all traffic until further notice." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling his heart rate slowly return to normal. When he opened them, Richard was looking at him. "That charter to Denver," Richard said. "They were pushing for immediate departure, right?" "Yeah." "If they'd left when they wanted to, they'd have been in the air when that bird strike happened. They'd have been coming back to this." He gestured at the fog-covered runway, at the emergency vehicles now surrounding the disabled aircraft. "I know." "Did you try to warn them?" Ethan thought about Sophia's face, about the contempt in her voice, about Marcus's laughter. "I tried." Richard nodded slowly. "The pilot, Mercer. He called me directly about 15 minutes ago. Said he was shutting down the departure despite passenger pressure. Said you'd given him the straight facts about the weather when no one else would." "I just told him what the data showed." "Yeah, well," Richard looked out at the fog. "In this job, that's enough. Sometimes that's everything." Ethan descended from the tower and walked back across the ramp to the operations center. Maya looked up from her drawings when he came in. "Is everyone okay?" she asked. "Yeah, sweetheart. Everyone's okay." "Good." The bunny was worried. "Tell the bunny she can relax now." Maya whispered something to the rabbit, then looked up at her father with an expression that was too knowing for a 6-year-old. "Are we still going home soon?" Ethan checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. His shift ended at 9, but with the runway closed and a disabled aircraft on the field, he'd probably be here another hour handling coordination. "Pretty soon," he said. "I've got to help with a few more things first." "Okay." Maya went back to her drawing, completely trusting, completely patient. Ethan sat down at his desk and pulled up the live camera feeds. The fog had transformed the airport into a wasteland of limited visibility and canceled operations, including, he noticed, that corporate charter to Denver. The jet sat dark at the private terminal, its passengers presumably back inside the FBO lounge, their billion-dollar acquisition slipping further away with every minute the runway stayed closed. His phone buzzed. "Captain Mercer." "Made the right call. Fog hit exactly when you said it would. Passengers are pissed, but alive and pissed beats the alternative." Ethan typed back. "Glad you're safe. How bad is the passenger situation?" "CEO lady is having a meltdown. Threatening lawsuits, calling my company president, the works. Between you and me, she's got bigger problems than missing her meeting. She's got a COO who's been on the phone trying to throw her under the bus to their board of directors for the last 20 minutes. Corporate politics at 30,000 feet. Except we never got to 30,000 feet. Sounds messy. You have no idea. Anyway, thanks for the heads up on the weather. You saved us from being part of a really bad statistic." Ethan set down his phone and looked at Maya, at her careful concentration as she colored in the picture she was drawing. A stick figure man and a smaller stick figure girl standing beside what might have been an airplane or might have been a dinosaur. It was hard to tell with Maya's artwork. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" "You and me. And the bunny. We're on an adventure." "What kind of adventure?" "The kind where everyone gets home safe." Ethan felt something catch in his throat. "That's the best kind of adventure." Maya nodded seriously. I know. That's why I drew it. At 9:15 p.m., the fog still hadn't cleared, but Ethan's replacement supervisor arrived to take over coordination for the night shift. Ethan gathered up Maya's drawings, her bunny, her jacket, and his own belongings. As they walked toward the parking lot, Maya's hand in his, Ethan saw movement in the private terminal. Through the glass windows, he could see Sophia Bennett pacing, phone pressed to her ear, her face a mask of stress and fury. The other executives sat scattered around the lounge, some on phones, some staring at laptops, all of them trapped in the same fog that had grounded their dreams. Maya tugged on his hand. Is that the mean lady? Yeah. She looks sad now. Sometimes people who are mean are really just sad underneath. Do you think she's sorry? Ethan thought about it, watching Sophia through the window, watching her argue with whoever was on the other end of that phone call. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe one day. They got to Ethan's truck, a 12-year-old Ford with Maya's car seat in the back and a faded Cedar Hollow High School parking sticker still clinging to the windshield. As he buckled Maya in, she yawned enormously. Daddy? Yeah? You're the smartest person at the whole airport. Ethan smiled, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. The bunny tell you that? No, I just know it, because you're my dad. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Maya. I love you too, and the bunny loves you, and even though Mommy is in heaven, she probably loves you too. The words hit him like they always did, with that mixture of pain and gratitude that came from a child trying to make sense of absence. I know she does, sweetheart. I know she does. As Ethan drove away from Cedar Hollow Regional Airport, the fog thick enough that he had to slow to 30 miles an hour, he thought about what Sophia had said, about giving up his career, about trying to feel important, about not mattering anymore. Maybe she was right. Maybe his career was over. Maybe his certifications had expired. Maybe he was just a ground operations coordinator now, someone who made sure the fuel trucks ran on time and the paperwork got filed correctly. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror at Maya, already falling asleep with her bunny clutched against her chest, Ethan knew something Sophia Bennett didn't. Mattering had nothing to do with titles or salary or how many zeros were in your acquisition deal. It had everything to do with who was waiting for you when you came home. And by that measure, Ethan Brooks mattered more than he ever had in his entire life. The fog swallowed his truck's taillights as he drove toward home, toward dinner that would probably come from the freezer, toward a daughter who would wake him up at 2 a.m. with nightmares about forgetting her mother's face, toward a life that looked nothing like success, but felt like everything that mattered. Behind him, at Cedar Hollow Regional Airport, Sophia Bennett stood at the window of the private terminal, her billion-dollar deal dying by inches, her career hanging by a thread, her COO working behind her back to save himself at her expense. And in the parking lot, barely visible through the fog, she could just make out the taillights of an old Ford truck disappearing into the night. She didn't know it yet, but that truck, and the man driving it, was about to become the only thing standing between her and complete disaster. The fog didn't lift that night. It settled over Cedar Hollow like something with weight, pressing down on the valley, turning the airport into an island of useless lights and grounded ambitions. By 10 p.m., every flight had been canceled or diverted, and the private terminal's lounge had transformed into a pressure cooker of corporate anxiety and failing cell phone signals. Sophia Bennett stood at the window, her phone dying in her hand, watching absolutely nothing through the white. Behind her, Marcus Chen scrolled through his laptop with the kind of focus that meant he was looking for solutions or exits. With Marcus, it was hard to tell which. The Denver team just confirmed, he said without looking up. If we're not in that conference room by 9 a.m., Stellaris Capital walks. They've got 3 other acquisition targets lined up, and our exclusivity window closes at midnight tonight. Sophia didn't turn around. I'm aware, Marcus. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, we're about to lose everything because some overzealous airport employee spooked our pilot. Now Sophia turned. Mercer made his own call. He's the captain. Right. After that guy in the jacket told him the sky was falling. Marcus finally looked up from his screen. The same guy you humiliated in front of everyone, which, by the way, probably felt great in the moment, but might have created a problem. What problem? The problem where now he definitely won't help us, even if we need him. Sophia felt something cold move through her chest. Why would we need him? Marcus gestured at the fog, because this isn't clearing, and the Denver deal isn't the only fire burning. While you've been staring out the window, I've been fielding calls from the board, specifically from Richard Castellano. The name hit Sophia like cold water. Richard Castellano, board member, major shareholder, and the man who'd opposed her CEO appointment from the beginning. The man who'd voted against her twice before the chairman overruled him. What does Richard want? He wants to know why we're grounded at a regional airport instead of closing the biggest deal in company history, and he's asking very pointed questions about your judgment. My judgment? Your decision-making process, your risk assessment, your leadership under pressure. Marcus's voice was careful, like he was reading from a script he had already rehearsed. He's questioning whether someone your age has the experience necessary to navigate high-stakes situations. There it was, the real concern underneath everything else. Not the deal, not the fog, not the timeline. The question of whether Sophia Bennett, at 30 years old, was actually qualified to run a company or just a diversity hire who'd gotten lucky. Did you tell Richard that our pilot made the call to abort departure? Sophia asked quietly. I told him we encountered unexpected weather complications. That's not what I asked. Marcus closed his laptop. Sophia, I've been with this company for 8 years. I've survived 3 CEOs and 2 restructurings. And I've learned that when things go wrong, the board doesn't care about meteorology or pilot discretion. They care about outcomes. And right now, our outcome is that we're stuck in fog while our billion-dollar deal evaporates. So you're covering your ass. I'm providing context that protects the team. There's a difference. Sophia wanted to throw something. Instead, she looked back out at the fog, at her own reflection in the glass. Too young, too female, too unproven. Everything Richard Castellano had said she was when he'd tried to block her appointment. Her phone buzzed. The battery icon showed 3%, but the message came through. Her chairman, David Wu. Call me immediately. Richard is making noise about emergency board meeting. The phone died before she could respond. I need a charger, Sophia said to the room. One of the other executives, Jennifer Park, VP of Operations, held up a cable. I've got one, but there's no outlets near the windows. I don't care where it is. I need to call David before Richard poisons the entire board. Sophia crossed to where Jennifer sat, plugged in her phone, and waited the eternal 30 seconds for it to come back to life. When it did, she had 4 missed calls from David Wu and 2 from numbers she didn't recognize but assumed were other board members circling like sharks. She called David. He answered on the first ring. Where are you? Still at Cedar Hollow. Fog grounded everything. I'm aware. I'm also aware that Richard has been calling board members for the past hour, suggesting we need to reconsider your appointment. Sophia felt her stomach drop. Based on what? A weather delay? Based on a pattern of judgment calls that, in his words, demonstrate insufficient experience for crisis management. He's pointing to the Meridian contract negotiations last quarter, the supply chain disruption in August, and now this. Those situations were all resolved successfully. Successfully, but expensively. And now we've got a billion-dollar acquisition dying because you're grounded at a regional airport. Richard's narrative is writing itself, Sophia. Young CEO, good at strategy but weak at execution, can't close when it matters. Sophia closed her eyes. What do you need from me? I need you in Denver by 9 a.m. I need this acquisition closed. I need Richard's narrative proven wrong. The fog? I don't care about the fog. I don't care about the weather. I care about results. Find a way. The line went dead. Sophia stood there with her phone in her hand, feeling the weight of everything collapsing inward. Behind her, she could feel the rest of her team watching, waiting to see what she'd do, waiting to see if she was actually the leader they'd followed or just someone who'd been promoted beyond her abilities. We need options, she said, turning back to the group. Marcus, what's the alternate routing look like? Marcus pulled up a map on his laptop. Denver's a 6-hour drive from here, but in this fog we're looking at 8, maybe 9 hours, which puts us there at 7 a.m. if we leave right now. Tight, but doable. What about other airports? Closest major hub is Oak Ridge International, about 40 miles north, but the same weather system is affecting that area. We'd need to drive there, hope they're not fogged in, and catch a charter that's probably already booked. Jennifer leaned forward. I've got a contact at Signature Flight Support in Oak Ridge. Let me make a call. She stepped away. phone pressed to her ear. Sophia looked at the remaining team members: Marcus, David Reyes from legal, and Amanda Foster from finance. 4 people who'd followed her into this disaster. 4 people whose careers were now tied to whether she could pull off a miracle in the next 12 hours. Even if we get to Oak Ridge, Amanda said quietly, we're talking about a best-case scenario where everything goes perfectly. No traffic, no delays, no additional weather complications. And we all know best-case scenarios don't exist. David Reyes nodded. And if we miss the deadline, Stellaris walks. Which means we've spent 3 months and $4 million on due diligence for nothing. Which means Richard Castellano gets exactly the ammunition he needs to remove Sophia from the CEO position. Thank you, David, Sophia said flatly. Very helpful. I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm trying to be realistic about what failure looks like here. Jennifer came back, her expression grim. Signature has a charter available. Single slot leaves at 11 p.m. But they need confirmation in the next 20 minutes, and they need us on site in Oak Ridge by 10:45. That's 40 miles in an hour during fog conditions. Sophia checked her watch. 10:03 p.m. 42 minutes to drive 40 miles through fog thick enough to ground aircraft. The math didn't work. What about Mercer? Marcus asked. Our pilot. Can he fly us to Oak Ridge? Not in this fog, Jennifer said. I already asked. He said visibility is below minimums for any movement. So we drive. In convoy? 5 people, 5 cars, through fog, hoping we all make it in time? Sophia thought about it. Thought about the risk, the exposure, the absolute chaos if even one person got lost or delayed. Thought about Richard Castellano's narrative, young CEO makes desperate, poorly planned decisions under pressure. But she also thought about 3 months of work evaporating, about the board meeting that would follow, about watching everything she'd built get dismantled by men who'd never believed in her from the start. We drive, Sophia said. 1 vehicle, all of us together. We leave in 5 minutes. Whose vehicle? Amanda asked. Good question. Sophia had arrived in a town car that had left hours ago. Marcus drove a Tesla that might be great in California but useless in fog. Jennifer had flown in commercial and rented a compact sedan. We need something that can handle bad weather and bad roads, Marcus said. Something local. And that's when Sophia remembered the Ford truck, the one she'd seen through the window as it drove away, taillights disappearing into white. The truck driven by the man in the airport jacket. The man she'd humiliated. No, she said out loud. No what? Jennifer asked. Nothing. Just thinking. But Sophia's mind was already working through the problem, trying to find any other solution, any other path that didn't require her to walk back across that ramp and ask for help from someone she'd treated like garbage. Marcus was watching her. You've got an idea. It's not a good idea. At this point, I'll take any idea. Sophia looked out at the fog again, at the operations center building barely visible across the ramp. Somewhere in there, that man, Ethan something, was probably finishing his shift, probably getting ready to drive home in that truck that had looked old but solid, the kind of vehicle built for rural roads and bad weather. The ground operations coordinator, Sophia said slowly, the one who warned us about the weather. He drives a truck. I saw him leave earlier. Marcus's eyebrows rose. You want to ask the guy you destroyed in front of everyone to drive us 40 miles through fog? I don't want to. I'm considering whether it's the only option. It's definitely not the only option. We could call a local car service, rent an SUV, commandeer the airport shuttle, all of which takes time we don't have. Sophia checked her watch again. 10:06 p.m. 39 minutes. He knows these roads. He understands the weather. And he's local, which means he's probably driven through fog like this before. He also definitely hates you, Amanda pointed out. Like, justifiably hates you. I'm aware. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I can call the airport operations office, see if he's still here. Do it. Jennifer made the call, spoke quietly for a moment, then covered the phone. He left 20 minutes ago, but they have his cell number on file for emergency operations coordination. Sophia felt her stomach twist. This was a terrible idea. This was humiliating and desperate, and exactly the kind of impulsive decision Richard Castellano would use as evidence of poor judgment. But it was also the only option that might actually work. Get the number, Sophia said. Jennifer spoke into the phone, then read out a number. Sophia entered it into her own phone, stared at it for a long moment, then pressed call. It rang 4 times. She was preparing to leave a voicemail when a voice answered. This is Ethan. The sound of his voice, calm, measured, completely unsurprised by a call at 10:07 p.m., made something in Sophia's chest clench. She could hear background noise, maybe a TV, maybe traffic. She forced herself to speak. Mr. Brooks, this is Sophia Bennett. From the Denver Charter, I need to ask you something. Silence on the other end. Long enough that Sophia thought he might have hung up. Then, how did you get this number? The airport operations office. I'm sorry to call you after you've left, but we have an emergency situation, and I think you might be the only person who can help. More silence. Then a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something else. That's interesting timing. What kind of emergency? We need to get to Oak Ridge International Airport in the next 40 minutes. There's a charter flight waiting, and if we miss it, we lose everything. I know that's not your problem, and I know I have no right to ask you for anything after how I treated you earlier. But I'm asking anyway. The silence stretched out again. Sophia could feel her team watching her, could feel the seconds ticking away, could feel everything balanced on what this man said next. You need a ride, Ethan said finally. His voice was flat, unreadable. Yes. Through fog that you insisted wasn't a problem. I was wrong about the fog. You were wrong about a lot of things. The words landed like a slap. Sophia deserved them, knew she deserved them, but they still stung. You're right, she said quietly. I was wrong. I was rude, I was dismissive, and I treated you like you didn't matter. And I'm sorry, but right now I have 4 people whose careers depend on making it to Oak Ridge, and I'm asking for your help. Not because I deserve it, but because they do. She heard something on the other end of the line, a voice, young, asking a question she couldn't make out. Then Ethan's voice, muffled, responding, Just someone from work, sweetheart. Go brush your teeth. When he came back on the line, his voice had changed, still flat, but with something else underneath. I have my daughter with me. She goes to bed at 9:30. It's past 10. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you understand anything about my life or my priorities. You made that very clear earlier. Sophia closed her eyes. You're right. I don't understand, but I'm still asking. Another pause, then, Oak Ridge is 40 miles on backcountry roads in heavy fog. In good conditions, it's a 45-minute drive. Tonight, we're looking at over an hour, maybe more. And you need to be there in, what did you say, 40 minutes? 37 now. That's not possible. Can we try? Ms. Bennett, please. The word came out before Sophia could stop it, before pride could get in the way. Please, I know I don't deserve your help. But please. The silence this time was different. Sophia could hear thinking happening on the other end, could hear the internal calculation of a man who'd been hurt, deciding whether to help the person who'd hurt him. I'll pick you up at the private terminal in 15 minutes, Ethan said finally. Bring everyone who's coming. No luggage except essentials. And Ms. Bennett? Yes? My daughter will be in the truck. If anyone on your team says anything that upsets her or makes her uncomfortable, I'm turning around immediately. Are we clear? Completely clear. 15 minutes. The line went dead. Sophia lowered her phone and looked at her team. Marcus was staring at her like she'd just performed magic. Jennifer looked impressed. Amanda and David just looked worried. He's coming, Sophia said. 15 minutes. Essentials only. And all of you need to understand something. His daughter will be with him. And if any of you say one word that upsets that child, I will personally end your career before he has a chance to turn the truck around. Understood? 4 heads nodded. Good. Marcus, call Signature and confirm we're en route to Oak Ridge. Jennifer, call Mercer and let him know we're attempting alternate transportation. Amanda, David, gather whatever you absolutely need for the Denver presentation. Nothing else. The team scattered into motion. Sophia stood at the window, watching the fog, feeling the weight of what she'd just done. She'd begged for help from a man she'd humiliated. She'd admitted she was wrong. She'd put her billion-dollar deal in the hands of a ground operations coordinator driving an old Ford truck. Richard Castellano would have a field day with this. But Richard Castellano wasn't here, and the clock was ticking. 14 minutes later, exactly on time, headlights appeared in the fog. The old Ford truck pulled up to the private terminal, and through the driver's window, Sophia could see Ethan Brooks behind the wheel. In the passenger seat, barely visible, was a small figure in a car seat, his daughter. Sophia pushed through the doors first, her team following. The cold air hit her immediately, and she realized she'd left her coat inside. Too late now. Ethan rolled down the window. In the dome light, Sophia could see his face clearly for the first time, younger than she'd initially thought, with the kind of fatigue that came from carrying weight alone. His eyes were steady on her, no warmth, no anger, just assessment. 5 people, he said, looking at the group. I've got room for 4 plus Maya. Someone needs to sit up front with us. I will, Sophia said immediately. Ethan nodded. Everyone else in the back. There's a bench seat. It's going to be tight. Move quickly. Marcus, Jennifer, Amanda, and David climbed into the extended cab. Sophia heard Marcus mutter something about sardines, but then everyone was in, buckled, silent. Sophia opened the front passenger door. In the car seat, Maya was already asleep. Her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest, her head tilted at an angle that made Sophia's neck hurt just looking at it. I'm going to have to put you in the middle, Ethan said, his voice low so as not to wake Maya. It's not ideal, but it's the only way everyone fits. That's fine. Sophia climbed in, positioning herself between Ethan and his sleeping daughter. The truck smelled like old coffee and something sweet, maybe juice boxes or fruit snacks. The seat was worn but clean, and there was a child's drawing taped to the dashboard showing stick figures in what might have been an airplane. Ethan put the truck in gear and pulled away from the terminal without another word. For the first 5 minutes, nobody spoke. The only sounds were the engine, the heater blowing stale, warm air, and the occasional murmur from the back seat. Sophia could feel Ethan's presence beside her, solid, focused, his hands steady on the wheel as he navigated through fog so thick that the headlights barely penetrated 20 feet ahead. Finally, Jennifer broke the silence from the back. Mr. Brooks, I'm Jennifer Park. I just want to say thank you for doing this. We know it's an imposition. It's fine, Ethan said, his eyes never leaving the road. Still, we appreciate it. More silence. The truck slowed as they approached an intersection, and Ethan made a turn onto a road that seemed to lead away from anything resembling civilization. Are we going the right way? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice casual and failing. This is the shortcut to Route 47, Ethan replied. The main highway will be jammed with people who don't know how to drive in fog. This way is faster. You're sure? I've lived here my entire life, I'm sure. Marcus subsided, and Sophia felt a small flash of satisfaction at the shutdown. But the satisfaction faded quickly as she looked at the road ahead, or rather, the lack of visible road ahead. They were driving through absolute white, with only occasional glimpses of pavement or shoulder or anything that suggested where the truck should be. Yet Ethan drove with the kind of confidence that came from muscle memory, from having taken this route so many times that he could probably navigate it blind. Maya stirred in her car seat, making a small sound. Without thinking, Sophia reached out and gently adjusted the rabbit that was slipping from the girl's arms. Maya's breathing settled back into sleep rhythm. When Sophia looked up, Ethan was watching her. Just for a second, a glance that held something she couldn't quite read, before his eyes returned to the road. How old is she? Sophia asked quietly. 6. She's beautiful. Yeah. Something in Ethan's voice softened. She is. The drawing on the dashboard, did she make that? This afternoon. That's supposed to be me at work. The big circle is an airplane. The small circle with rabbit ears is her. Sophia looked at the drawing again, seeing it differently now. Not just a child's artwork, but a record of waiting. Of hours spent at an airport while Dad worked. Of making the best of being the kid who had to tag along because there was no one else to watch her. I'm sorry, Sophia said. And this time, she wasn't talking about the phone call or the favor. She was talking about what she'd said earlier, about giving up his career, about trying to feel important. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He slowed the truck, navigated around what looked like a disabled vehicle on the shoulder, then accelerated back to whatever speed he deemed safe for these conditions. When my wife died, he said finally, his voice so quiet that Sophia had to lean slightly toward him to hear, Maya was 3 years old.
too young to really understand what happened, but old enough to know that her mother was gone. I had a good job in Seattle. Operations supervisor for a mid-sized carrier. Six-figure salary, management track, all the things that society tells you matter.
He paused, checking the rearview mirror, then continued. But the job required 60-hour weeks, constant travel, overnight shifts, and I had a 3-year-old who'd just lost her mother, who needed her father to be present, not just physically there, but actually present. So I had a choice to make. Sophia waited, not speaking, barely breathing. I could keep the career and hire full-time childcare, put Maya in a situation where she'd lose both parents in different ways, one to death, one to ambition. Or I could walk away from everything I'd built and find something that let me be the parent she needed. So you came here. So I came here. Took a job that pays a third of what I used to make, gave up certifications I'd worked years to earn, moved to a place where nobody knew my name or cared about my resume. And you know what I found? What? That being present for my daughter's childhood mattered more than any promotion I could have chased. That being there when she woke up from nightmares about her mother mattered more than any corner office. That reading bedtime stories and making breakfast and knowing all the names of her stuffed animals mattered more than every single thing I thought defined success. He glanced at her again, and in the dashboard light, Sophia could see something raw in his expression. So when you said I gave up my career to become a ground operations coordinator, you were right. I did. And I'd make that exact same choice every single day for the rest of my life. Because Maya is 6 years old right now, and she'll only be 6 years old once, and I refuse to miss it because some corporation needs me to optimize their departure metrics. Sophia felt something breaking open inside her chest. I didn't understand. No, you didn't. You looked at me and saw someone who'd failed, someone who couldn't cut it in the real world, so he settled for a small-town job with a child as an excuse. That's exactly what you thought. And that's fine. Most people think that. We live in a world where your value is determined by your title and your salary and how impressive your LinkedIn profile looks. Nobody puts "chose to raise my daughter" in their professional summary. From the back seat, Amanda spoke up quietly. I would, if I'd had the courage to make that choice. Everyone turned to look at her. Amanda's face was barely visible in the darkness, but her voice was steady. I've got 2 kids, she said. 8 and 10. I see them maybe 2 hours a day if I'm lucky. I miss school plays because of board meetings. I miss soccer games because of quarterly reviews. I've missed so much trying to prove I could compete with people who don't have to choose between being a parent and being successful. She paused, and Sophia heard something like tears in her voice. And you know what? My 8-year-old daughter asked me last week if I even liked her, because in her mind, I must not like her very much if I'm always choosing work over being with her. The truck's heater hummed into the silence that followed. Sophia stared straight ahead, unable to look at any of her team, unable to face what Amanda had just revealed. Ethan's voice came quiet and firm. It's not too late. Kids are resilient. They forgive easier than adults. You can still make different choices. Can I? Because from where I sit, if I scale back at work, I lose my position. Someone younger and hungrier takes my spot, and suddenly I'm unemployable at 45 with a resume gap. Maybe. Or maybe you find something that values you as a whole person instead of just as a productivity unit. That's easy to say when you've already made your peace with smaller paychecks. It wasn't easy, Ethan said. It was terrifying, but it was necessary. The truck slowed again, and Sophia realized they were approaching another turn. Ethan navigated it smoothly, and when they straightened out, she caught a glimpse of a road sign through the fog. Route 47, 12 miles. They were making better time than she'd expected. Can I ask you something? Jennifer said from the back. Sure, Ethan replied. Why did you agree to help us? After everything Sophia said to you, after we watched her humiliate you, why did you answer that phone call and agree to drive us through the worst conditions possible? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, because my daughter was listening when I got that call. And I needed her to see that when someone asks for help, even someone who's hurt you, the answer isn't revenge. It's deciding whether helping them is the right thing to do regardless of how they've treated you. That's very mature, Jennifer said. It's very hard, Ethan corrected. And I'm not sure I would have said yes if Maya hadn't been standing there watching me. But she was, and I needed her to see her father be better than his worst impulses. Sophia felt tears starting to form and forced them back. This wasn't the time. This wasn't her moment to fall apart. Besides, Ethan added, and there was something different in his voice now, something lighter. You've got 4 people in this truck who did absolutely nothing wrong. They don't deserve to lose their careers because their boss made a bad call. And I've spent enough time in corporate environments to know that when executives fail, it's usually the people below them who pay the price. Marcus laughed from the back, a surprised, genuine sound. That's the truest thing I've heard all year. How long were you in corporate? David asked. 8 years, worked my way up from ground crew to operations supervisor. Saw 3 rounds of layoffs, 2 restructurings, and 1 bankruptcy. Learned real fast that loyalty runs one direction in most companies. Yet you still help us. I'm helping you in spite of your company, not because of it. The truck crested a hill, and suddenly the fog thinned just enough that Sophia could see the valley spread out below them. In the distance, maybe 5 miles away, she could see the lights of what had to be Oak Ridge, a sprawl of civilization that looked like a promise after 30 minutes of driving through white nothing. We're going to make it, Jennifer said, checking her phone. It's 10:41. We've got 4 minutes to get there. We'll make it, Ethan said with absolute certainty. And they did. At exactly 10:44 p.m., the Ford truck pulled up to the private aviation terminal at Oak Ridge International Airport. Through the windows, Sophia could see a charter aircraft on the ramp, engines already running, crew visible on the stairs. Ethan put the truck in park but left it running. You're here. Sophia's team piled out of the back seat, grabbing their bags, already running toward the terminal. Only Sophia remained, sitting in the middle seat between Ethan and his sleeping daughter. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You don't need to thank me. I need to do something. Let me pay you. I don't want your money, Ms. Bennett. Ethan's voice was firm, but not unkind. I want you to think about what happened tonight, about who you dismissed and who you trusted, and what you learned from the difference. I will. I promise. Good. He looked past her at Maya, still asleep, completely unaware that she'd just been part of saving a billion-dollar deal. And Ms. Bennett, when you close that acquisition tomorrow, when you're standing in that boardroom feeling successful, remember that success looks different for different people. For you, it's billion-dollar deals. For me, it's making sure my daughter knows her father chooses her first, every single time. Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She opened the door and climbed out. The rest of her team was already at the terminal entrance, Jennifer waving frantically for her to hurry. But Sophia turned back to the truck one more time. Ethan? He looked at her through the open window. You were right about the fog. About everything. He nodded once. I know. Then he pulled away, taillights disappearing into the night, and Sophia was left standing in the cold, watching him go, understanding that she'd just met someone who'd redefined what it meant to matter. She ran toward the terminal, toward her team, toward the charter that would carry her to Denver and the deal that would define her career. But part of her mind stayed in that truck, replaying everything Ethan had said, understanding with perfect clarity that the most important lessons didn't come from boardrooms or business schools. They came from people who'd chosen love over ambition and somehow found a way to live with the consequences. The charter lifted off from Oak Ridge at 10:58 p.m., 12 minutes before their window closed. Sophia pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched the fog-covered landscape disappear below, replaced by the clean darkness of altitude where weather couldn't reach you, and consequences felt temporarily suspended. We made it, Jennifer said from across the narrow aisle, her voice carrying a disbelief that Sophia felt in her bones. We're not there yet, Marcus replied, already typing on his laptop. We've still got to land in Denver, get to the hotel, sleep for maybe 3 hours, then walk into a boardroom and convince Stellaris Capital that we're a stable, reliable company worth $1 billion investment. While looking like we just crawled through a war zone, Amanda added, pulling at her wrinkled blazer. David was scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the blue glow. Richard Castellano just sent an email to the full board. Subject line, concerns regarding CEO performance and decision-making. The cabin went quiet. Even the engine noise seemed to fade as everyone processed what that meant. What does it say? Sophia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. I'll forward it to you, but the summary is that he's calling for an emergency board meeting next week to discuss your leadership. He's citing tonight's delays as evidence of poor crisis management. Of course he is. There's more. He's questioning why we took unconventional transportation from Cedar Hollow to Oak Ridge instead of waiting for weather to clear or using established charter services. Sophia felt something cold spread through her chest. How does he know about that? Marcus closed his laptop slowly. Someone told him. 4 pairs of eyes turned to look at him. Don't look at me like that, Marcus said, raising his hands. I didn't call Richard, but I did call our operations director to update him on our status. And our operations director reports to the COO, and the COO is Richard's golf buddy. So you might as well have called Richard directly, Jennifer said, her voice tight. I was providing a status update to my chain of command. That's my job. Your job is to support this team, Amanda shot back, not to feed information to people actively trying to undermine Sophia's position. Marcus's face hardened. My job is to protect myself and make sure that when this whole thing collapses, I'm not the one buried in the rubble. You all might be willing to go down with the ship, but I've got a family to support and a career to protect. Then maybe you should have stayed in Cedar Hollow, David said quietly. Maybe I should have, but I'm here, and I'm going to Denver, and I'm going to do my job at tomorrow's meeting. What happens after that isn't my problem. Sophia stared at Marcus, seeing him clearly for the first time. The ambitious COO who'd attached himself to her rise, who'd claimed to support her vision, who'd promised loyalty right up until the moment loyalty became inconvenient. When we land in Denver, Sophia said, her voice calm, you're going to call the operations director back. You're going to tell him that you provided incomplete information earlier and that you need to correct the record. What record? The record that says I made poor decisions tonight. You're going to explain that I correctly identified alternate transportation when weather grounded our primary aircraft, that I coordinated logistics under pressure, that I got this team to Denver with time to spare despite circumstances beyond anyone's control. Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. You want me to lie? I want you to tell the complete truth instead of the partial truth you gave them. Or you can keep feeding Richard Castellano ammunition, and when I survive this, and I will survive this, you'll be the first person I remove from the executive team. You're threatening me? I'm clarifying consequences. You get to choose which version you want. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then turned back to his laptop without answering. But Sophia could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the weighing of options, the assessment of which path served him best. She turned back to the window, watching the darkness slide past, and realized something had shifted inside her. The Sophia who'd stood in Cedar Hollow Airport mocking a man for trying to help would have tried to appease Marcus, would have worried about keeping him happy, would have bent herself into shapes to maintain team unity. But that Sophia had spent an hour in a truck with a man who'd given up everything for what actually mattered, and she couldn't unsee what he'd shown her. Jennifer leaned across the aisle. For what it's worth, I think you handled that perfectly. Did I? Because I just threatened a senior member of my executive team. You set boundaries. There's a difference. Jennifer lowered her voice. Marcus has been playing both sides since you got appointed. He smiles in your face and hedges his bets with Richard behind your back. I've watched him do it for months. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? 3 months ago, you trusted Marcus completely. You wouldn't have wanted to hear that your right hand was planning his exit strategy. Sophia knew Jennifer was right. 3 months ago, she'd been so focused on proving herself, on being the CEO everyone expected, that she'd missed the rot growing in her own team. Things are going to change, Sophia said quietly. After tomorrow, after this deal closes, a lot of things are going to change. Good. The flight to Denver took 2 hours. Sophia spent most of it reviewing the acquisition documents, memorizing numbers and projections and contract terms. But part of her mind kept drifting back to that truck, to Maya asleep in her car seat, to Ethan's voice saying that being present mattered more than any corner office. They landed at Denver International at 1:14 a.m. By 2 a.m., they were checked into the downtown Hyatt, rooms secured, alarm clock set for 6:30 a.m. Sophia stood in her hotel room, looking at herself in the bathroom mirror, seeing someone who looked exhausted and wired and nothing like the confident CEO she was supposed to project in 7 hours. Her phone buzzed. A text from David Wu, her chairman. Richard sent his email. Ignore it. Close the deal tomorrow and this all goes away. Fail and I can't protect you. No pressure then. Sophia set her phone down and tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop running. She kept replaying the conversation with Ethan, kept hearing Marcus's justifications, kept seeing Richard Castellano's next moves like chess pieces on a board. When her alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., she felt like she'd aged 10 years overnight. The Stellaris Capital offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Denver. Sophia and her team arrived at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, looking as polished as they could manage on 3 hours of sleep and hotel room preparation. The reception area was all marble and steel, with abstract art that probably cost more than Sophia's annual salary. A young woman in an expensive suit greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Conference room 7, top floor." They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened, they were greeted by James Harrison himself, 62, silver-haired, wearing a suit that had definitely been custom-made. He shook Sophia's hand with the kind of grip that was meant to establish dominance. "Miss Bennett, glad you could make it. We were beginning to wonder." "Weather complications," Sophia said smoothly. "But we're here, we're ready, and we're excited to move forward." "Excellent. My team is already in the conference room. Shall we?" The conference room was exactly what Sophia expected. Long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Rockies. Seated around the table were 5 people: Stellaris Capital's legal team, their financial advisors, and sitting at the head of the table, the man Sophia had only seen in photographs, Robert Chen, managing partner and the person whose signature would finalize this deal. Chen didn't stand when they entered. He simply gestured to the chairs across from his team. "Miss Bennett, you're young." It wasn't a question, and it definitely wasn't a compliment. 30, Sophia replied, taking her seat. "Old enough to have built a successful company, young enough to see where the industry is heading." Chen looked at the papers in front of him. "I've been reviewing your financials. Impressive growth trajectory, but I'm concerned about operational stability." "Here it comes," Sophia thought. "What concerns do you have?" she asked. "I received a call this morning from one of your board members, Richard Castellano. He expressed some concerns about leadership consistency and crisis management. Said there was an incident last night that raised questions about decision-making under pressure." Sophia felt her team tense around her. Marcus was staring at the table, his face carefully neutral. Jennifer's jaw was tight. Amanda looked ready to throw something. "Richard Castellano opposed my appointment as CEO," Sophia said calmly. "He's been looking for reasons to question my leadership since day one. Last night we encountered weather that grounded our scheduled flight. I coordinated alternate transportation and got my team here on time for this meeting. If that's a crisis management failure, I'd like to know what success looks like." Chen's expression didn't change. "Castellano suggested you made impulsive decisions, used unauthorized transportation, put your team at unnecessary risk." "Unauthorized transportation?" Sophia repeated. "We drove 40 miles with a local driver who knew the roads and got us safely to an alternate airport. The alternative was missing this meeting entirely. Was that the decision Richard thought I should make?" "He seems to think you should have waited for weather to clear and lost the deal in the process, which, coincidentally, is exactly what Richard wants. A failed acquisition gives him the ammunition he needs to remove me from the CEO position and install someone more traditional." Robert Chen leaned back in his chair, studying Sophia with eyes that had seen thousands of negotiations. "You're suggesting one of your board members is actively sabotaging your company's acquisitions. I'm suggesting that internal politics exist in every organization, and that sometimes those politics don't align with the company's best interests. That's concerning. It's reality. The question isn't whether we have internal disagreements. The question is whether this acquisition makes good business sense regardless of those disagreements. And I think the numbers speak for themselves." Chen looked down at the documents again. "Walk me through your Q3 projections. Your revenue growth is aggressive." Sophia launched into the presentation she'd memorized, pulling up slides on her laptop, displaying graphs and forecasts and market analysis. Jennifer jumped in with operational details. David covered the legal framework. Amanda broke down the financial models. Marcus sat silent through most of it, contributing only when directly asked a question. The presentation lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Chen and his team excused themselves to deliberate. Sophia and her team were left alone in the conference room, the Denver skyline sprawling beyond the windows. "That went well," Jennifer said, trying to sound optimistic. Did it? Amanda countered, because Robert Chen's face gave away absolutely nothing. He's a professional negotiator. That's his job, Marcus finally spoke up. He's going to say no. Richard's call poisoned the well. Chen's not going to invest $1 billion in a company with clear leadership instability. You don't know that, Sophia said. I know how these things work. I know that doubt kills deals faster than bad numbers, and Richard planted doubt. Then we'll deal with it. How? By threatening me again? By pretending you have this under control when we both know you don't? Sophia turned to face Marcus directly. Did you make that call? Did you tell the operations director anything else this morning? I updated him on our arrival time and confirmed we were on schedule for the meeting. That's it. Did you correct the record like I asked? Marcus's silence was answer enough. Get out, Sophia said quietly. What? Get out of this conference room. You're not part of this team anymore. You can't fire me in the middle of a... I'm not firing you. I'm removing you from this specific acquisition. You're done. Leave. Marcus stood slowly, his face flushed. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you in the first place. Now leave before security has to escort you out. Marcus grabbed his laptop and walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like finality. Jennifer let out a long breath. Well, that happened. Should have happened months ago, Amanda said. David was checking his phone. Richard just sent another email. He's scheduling that emergency board meeting for Monday, 2 days from now. Let him schedule it. If this deal closes, he won't have a leg to stand on. And if it doesn't close? Sophia looked at David, at Jennifer, at Amanda. 3 people who'd followed her through fog and failure, who'd trusted her judgment even when she'd given them reasons to doubt. Then I'll face whatever comes next, but at least I'll do it with people I can actually trust. The door opened. James Harrison stepped in, his expression unreadable. Ms. Bennett, Mr. Chen would like to speak with you, alone. Sophia's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. Of course. She followed Harrison down the hall to a smaller office. Robert Chen sat behind a desk, backlit by the window, his face in shadow. Sit down, Ms. Bennett. Sophia sat. Chen was quiet for a long moment, just looking at her. Then, I spoke with Captain Daniel Mercer this morning, the pilot who was supposed to fly you from Cedar Hollow to Denver last night. Sophia's heart stopped. He told me an interesting story, Chen continued, about a ground operations coordinator who warned you about dangerous weather, about you dismissing that warning because you didn't think an airport employee could possibly know more than you did, about the fog grounding your flight exactly as he predicted. Mr. Chen, he also told me about how that same coordinator, Ethan Brooks, I believe his name was, drove you and your team 40 miles through fog to make sure you didn't miss this meeting, despite the fact that you'd humiliated him in front of your entire team just hours earlier. Sophia felt her face burning. That's accurate. Why did he do that? I asked him to. That's not what I asked. I asked why he agreed. Why a man you'd treated poorly would choose to help you anyway. Sophia thought about Ethan's words in the truck, about his daughter watching, about choosing to be better than his worst impulses. Because he's a better person than I was in that moment, she said quietly. Because he understood that my team didn't deserve to suffer for my mistakes. And because he wanted his daughter to see that helping people is the right thing to do even when those people don't deserve it. Chen leaned forward, his face coming into the light. Do you know why I called your pilot this morning? No, sir. Because Richard Castellano's call bothered me. Not because of what he said about your leadership, but because of how eager he was to say it. In my experience, when someone is that desperate to undermine a competitor, it usually means they're afraid of what will happen if that competitor succeeds. Sophia waited, barely breathing. I don't invest in companies because they're perfect, Chen said. I invest in companies that can adapt, that can learn from mistakes, that can turn crisis into opportunity. Last night you encountered a situation that would have destroyed most deals. Weather delays, internal sabotage, impossible logistics. And somehow you got your team here on time. With help. Yes, with help. Which brings me to my other concern. Chen pulled out a file and opened it. Ethan Brooks. I had my team run a background check on him this morning. Very impressive resume. Operations supervisor for Pacific Airways, multiple certifications. 8 years of experience in aviation management. Then 3 years ago, he drops off the corporate grid entirely. Takes a job at a regional airport making a fraction of his previous salary. Do you know why? His wife died. He had a young daughter who needed him. He chose his daughter over his career, sacrificed everything he'd built to be present for her. Chen closed the file. That's the kind of person I want to do business with. Someone who understands that long-term value isn't just about quarterly returns. It's about building something sustainable, something that matters. Sophia's throat felt tight. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. I'm saying the acquisition is approved. My team will finalize the paperwork this afternoon. You'll have your billion-dollar deal, Ms. Bennett. Congratulations. The words took a moment to land. When they did, Sophia felt something between relief and disbelief wash over her. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet, because there's a condition. And there it was, the catch. What condition? Sophia asked. Ethan Brooks. I want him brought onto your executive team as Director of Operations and Risk Management. Full compensation package, flexible schedule, whatever it takes to get him to say yes. And I want it done within 30 days of acquisition close. Sophia stared at Chen, trying to process what she was hearing. You're making the deal contingent on hiring someone who currently works at a regional airport? I'm making the deal contingent on you recognizing talent when you see it. Brooks has exactly the kind of operational expertise your company lacks. He understands risk assessment, crisis management, and making decisions based on data rather than ego. Those are skills you need if you're going to scale successfully. He gave up his career to raise his daughter. He might not want to come back. Then you'll have to make it worth his while. Flexible hours, work-from-home options, family support, whatever he needs. I don't care how you structure it, but if you can't convince one person to join your team, how are you going to integrate the 50 employees we're bringing with this acquisition? It was a test, Sophia realized. Everything was a test. I'll talk to him, she said. You'll do more than talk to him. You'll make him an offer he can't refuse. And Ms. Bennett, this time you'll do it with respect. Chen stood, signaling the meeting was over. My team will send over the final contracts this afternoon. Your lawyers can review them. We'll close in 30 days, pending the usual due diligence and Brooks's hiring. Congratulations on your acquisition. Sophia stood on shaking legs. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Don't thank me. Thank Ethan Brooks. He's the one who convinced me you were worth the investment. Sophia left the office in a daze. Her team was waiting in the conference room, and when she walked in, they all looked up with identical expressions of desperate hope. We got it, Sophia said. The deal is approved. The room erupted. Jennifer hugged Amanda. David pumped his fist in the air, and for a moment everything felt like victory. But Sophia couldn't shake the weight of Chen's condition. She pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway, scrolling through her recent calls until she found Ethan's number. She stared at it for a long moment, thinking about what she needed to say, how she needed to say it. Then she pressed call. It rang 3 times before he answered. This is Ethan. It's Sophia Bennett. I'm sorry to call again, but I need to talk to you about something important. There was a pause. She could hear Maya's voice in the background, singing something about butterflies. I'm listening, Ethan said, not over the phone. Can I come to Cedar Hollow? Today? I know it's a lot to ask, but this can't wait. Another pause. What's this about? A job offer, a real one, with real compensation and a real understanding of what matters to you. But I need to explain it in person. Please. The silence stretched out. Then, Maya and I will be at Miller's Park this afternoon, 2 o'clock. You can find us there if you want to talk. Thank you. I'll be there. Miss Bennett? Yes? Come alone. No team, no executives, no corporate entourage. Just you. Just me, Sophia agreed. The line went dead. Sophia stood in the hallway of the Stellaris Capitol building, holding her phone, staring at nothing. She'd just closed the biggest deal of her career. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt terrified, because closing the deal was easy compared to what came next. She had to drive back to Cedar Hollow, find a man she'd humiliated, and convince him to rejoin the corporate world he'd intentionally left behind. And she had to do it without insulting him, without condescending to him, and without making assumptions about what he wanted or needed. For the first time in her career, Sophia Bennett couldn't rely on confidence or strategy or carefully rehearsed pitches. She had to rely on honesty, and she had absolutely no idea if that would be enough. Sophia landed back at Denver International at noon, rented a car, and started the 2-hour drive to Cedar Hollow with nothing but her phone, her wallet, and a growing sense that she was about to fail at something that actually mattered. The rental was a silver Lexus sedan, the kind of car that screamed corporate executive trying too hard. She considered switching it for something less obvious, but there wasn't time. By 1:45 p.m., she was pulling into Cedar Hollow, following GPS directions to Miller's Park, a place she'd never heard of and had no reason to know existed. The park turned out to be a modest stretch of grass and playground equipment on the edge of town, backed by woods and fronted by a parking lot with maybe 10 spaces. 3 were occupied. Sophia pulled into the 4th and sat there for a moment, watching through the windshield as a small figure in a purple jacket pumped her legs on a swing set, her stuffed rabbit sitting in the wood chips below. Maya. And standing beside the swings, one hand ready to catch his daughter if she fell, was Ethan Brooks. Sophia checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked exactly like what she was, exhausted, uncertain, running on fumes and desperation. She'd changed out of her business suit on the plane, opting for jeans and a sweater, trying to look approachable instead of corporate. But looking at herself now, she just looked like someone playing dress-up. She got out of the car. Ethan noticed her immediately. He said something to Maya, who looked over at Sophia with open curiosity, then went back to swinging. Ethan walked toward the parking lot, stopping about 10 feet away. "You came," he said. No inflection, just a statement of fact. "I said I would." "People say a lot of things." Sophia nodded, accepting that. "Is it okay if we talk? Or would you rather I just leave?" Ethan glanced back at Maya, who was now singing to herself on the swing. "We can talk, but not for long. Maya's got a play date at 3:30. I'll be quick." "You drove 2 hours to be quick?" "I drove 2 hours because what I need to say matters, and you deserve to hear it in person." Ethan studied her for a moment, then gestured toward a picnic table near the playground. They walked over and sat across from each other, the worn wood between them feeling like a negotiating table at the strangest business meeting Sophia had ever attended. "The deal closed," Sophia said. "The acquisition went through. Stellaris Capital approved everything." "Congratulations." "Thank you. But there's a condition. Robert Chen, the managing partner, he made the deal contingent on something specific." Ethan waited, his face giving away nothing. "He wants me to hire you," Sophia said, "as Director of Operations and Risk Management, full executive compensation, benefits, whatever schedule flexibility you need. He said if I can't get you to say yes within 30 days, the deal falls apart." For the first time since she'd arrived, something shifted in Ethan's expression. Not quite surprise, but close. "He called you this morning," Ethan said slowly. "Didn't he?" "Chen called to ask about last night." "He called Captain Mercer. Mercer told him everything, about the fog warning, about me dismissing you, about you driving us to Oak Ridge anyway. And then Chen had his people run a background check on you." "Of course he did." "He was impressed. By your resume, by your choices, by the fact that you gave up a high-paying career to raise your daughter. He said that's the kind of person he wants involved in companies he invests in." Ethan looked over at Maya, who'd abandoned the swings and was now digging in the wood chips with a stick, talking to her rabbit about buried treasure. "So he's making you hire me to prove you can recognize talent?" "Something like that. But also because he thinks you have skills my company genuinely needs. Operational expertise, risk assessment, crisis management. He's not wrong." "And what do you think?" The question was simple, but Sophia felt the weight behind it. This wasn't about Chen's opinion or the acquisition terms. This was about whether Sophia herself believed Ethan belonged on her team, or whether she was just checking a box to save her deal. "I think you're one of the smartest people I've ever met," Sophia said carefully. "I think you understand systems and patterns and risk in ways most executives fake their way through. I think you made a decision 3 years ago that most people would consider career suicide, and you did it anyway because you knew what mattered. And I think if I'm being completely honest, I'm terrified of this conversation because I have no idea how to convince you to say yes." "Why would I say yes?" "I don't know. That's why I'm terrified." Ethan almost smiled. "Almost. At least you're being honest." "I'm trying to be."
I spent my whole career pretending I had all the answers, pretending confidence was the same as competence. And then I met you, and you saw through that in about 30 seconds. It wasn't 30 seconds. It was more like 5. Now Sophia did smile despite everything. Even worse.
Maya had wandered closer, still talking to her rabbit. She looked up at Sophia with those enormous eyes that missed nothing. "You're the mean lady from the airport," Maya said matter-of-factly. Sophia felt her stomach drop. "Yes, I am. And I'm very sorry for being mean to your daddy." Maya considered this. "Did you apologize?" "I'm trying to." "The bunny says you should try harder." "The bunny is very wise. What does the bunny think would be a better apology?" Maya looked at her rabbit, appeared to listen to something only she could hear, then looked back at Sophia. "The bunny says you should tell my daddy why you were mean, because people aren't mean for no reason." Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds, Sophia thought. She looked at Ethan, who was watching his daughter with an expression that mixed pride and amusement. "Maya's right," Sophia said. "I was mean because I was scared. I had a very important meeting, and when you told me about the weather, it felt like you were telling me I was going to fail. And instead of listening to someone who actually knew what he was talking about, I attacked you to make myself feel more in control." Maya nodded seriously. "That's what bullies do. They're scared inside, so they're mean outside." "Yes, exactly like that." "Are you still a bully?" "I'm trying not to be." "Trying is good. The bunny says trying counts." Maya looked at her father. "Daddy, can I go play on the slide?" "Sure, sweetheart. Stay where I can see you." Maya ran off toward the playground equipment, rabbit tucked under her arm. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to Sophia. "She's got me figured out better than most adults," he said quietly. "I can't hide anything from her. She knows when I'm tired, when I'm worried, when I'm pretending everything's fine. It's like living with a very small, very perceptive therapist. She's remarkable. She's 6. She should be worried about dolls and cartoons, not whether her father is okay. But that's what happens when kids lose a parent young. They grow up too fast trying to take care of the one they have left." Sophia heard the pain underneath the words and understood that this was the real cost of Ethan's choice. Not the career he'd given up or the money he didn't make, but the burden his daughter carried because she'd experienced loss too early. "Tell me about the job," Ethan said, changing the subject before emotion could surface. "What would it actually involve?" "Operations oversight across 3 divisions. Risk assessment for major projects and acquisitions. Crisis management protocols. Building out the infrastructure we need to scale from a $50 million company to a $1 billion one." Sophia paused. "But I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what the role looks like. I've never built a position around someone's life circumstances before. So I need you to tell me what would make it work. What would make it possible for you to say yes without sacrificing what matters?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, watching Maya climb the slide ladder. "I work 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. No weekends unless it's a genuine emergency, and we define genuine emergency very carefully beforehand. No business travel that requires overnight stays. I need to be home when Maya goes to bed and be there when she wakes up." "Okay. I work remotely 3 days a week. The other 2 days, if I need to be on site, there has to be accommodation for Maya, a quiet space where she can do homework or read while I'm in meetings. I'm not leaving her with strangers or in daycare for 10 hours. We can set up a family room in the office, make it comfortable, give her space to be a kid. I make decisions based on data and safety, not politics or optics. If I say something is too risky, I need you to actually listen instead of overruling me because it's inconvenient. I will listen, I promise you that. Promises are easy when you're trying to close a deal. I need structural accountability, regular check-ins, transparent communication, and the authority to stop projects that don't meet safety standards." Sophia pulled out her phone and started making notes. "What else? Salary needs to be enough that I can move Maya and me out of our apartment into something with a yard. She deserves a yard. Somewhere she can play outside without me worrying about traffic or neighbors who drink too much and yell at 2 in the morning." "What's the number?" Ethan told her. It was less than Sophia had expected, less than what she paid Marcus before she'd effectively fired him yesterday. But she could see in Ethan's face that asking for it cost him something. that naming a price for his expertise felt like a betrayal of the choice he'd made 3 years ago.
That's the base salary, Sophia said.
But you'd also get equity, bonuses tied to company performance, full benefits including health insurance that actually covers things. We'll structure it so you're compensated fairly for the value you bring. I don't care about equity or bonuses. You should, because if this company succeeds, if we build something real, you should benefit from that. Your daughter should benefit from that. Ethan looked at her steadily. Why does this matter to you? And don't tell me it's because Chen made it a condition. Tell me the real reason. Sophia set down her phone. This was the moment, she realized. The moment where corporate polish wouldn't work, where strategy and negotiation tactics meant nothing. This was the moment that required the one thing she'd spent her career avoiding: vulnerability. Because I'm 30 years old and I've already sacrificed things I can't get back, she said quietly. I missed my sister's wedding because I had a board meeting. I missed my father's 70th birthday because I was closing a contract. I haven't been in a relationship that lasted more than 3 months because I don't have time for anything that doesn't advance my career. And I told myself that was okay, that it was necessary, that success required sacrifice. She looked over at Maya, now hanging upside down from the monkey bars, completely fearless. And then I met you and your daughter, and I saw what real sacrifice looks like, what it means to give up everything for something that actually matters. And I realized I've been lying to myself about what success means. So, this is about your guilt? No. This is about recognizing that I've been building something empty, a company that makes money but doesn't care about the people making it, a culture where someone like Marcus can thrive by playing politics, while someone like you ends up coordinating baggage carts. And if I'm going to be the CEO, if I'm going to lead this company, I need people around me who understand that there's more to life than quarterly earnings. Ethan watched her for a long moment. You're asking me to come back to the world I left, to put on a suit, sit in meetings, deal with executive politics and corporate bureaucracy. The same world that would have taken me away from Maya if I'd stayed. I'm asking you to help me build a different version of that world, one where you don't have to choose between being good at your job and being present for your daughter, where people like Amanda don't have to miss their kids' soccer games to prove they're committed, where success doesn't require sacrificing everything else that makes life worth living. That's ambitious. I know. Most companies talk about work-life balance and then expect you to answer emails at midnight. I'm not most companies, or at least, I'm trying not to be. Maya had finished with the monkey bars and was running back toward them, her rabbit bouncing in her grip. She stopped at the picnic table, breathing hard, her cheeks flushed. Daddy, I'm thirsty. Ethan reached into the backpack at his feet and pulled out a juice box. Maya took it and immediately turned to Sophia. Are you going to give my daddy a job? Sophia glanced at Ethan, who gave a slight nod. I'm trying to, but it's up to your daddy whether he wants it. Is it a good job? I think so. But your daddy would know better than me what makes a job good. Maya turned to Ethan. Is it a good job, Daddy? I don't know yet, sweetheart. That's what we're talking about. The bunny says you should ask if you can bring me to work sometimes, because jobs are better when families can be together. Ethan smiled, and for the first time since Sophia had arrived, she saw his face soften completely. The bunny is very smart. I know. That's why I listened to her. Maya took a long sip of her juice box, then looked at Sophia again. If my daddy works for you, you have to promise not to be mean to him anymore. I promise, Sophia said solemnly. I will never be mean to your daddy again. And you have to promise to listen when he tells you important things, because he's really smart and he knows lots of stuff. I promise that too. Okay, then I think you should give him the job. Maya finished her juice box and handed the empty container to Ethan. I'm going back to the slide now. She ran off, leaving Sophia and Ethan sitting in the wake of a 6-year-old's negotiation skills. Well, Ethan said, a hint of amusement in his voice. You've got Maya's approval. That's not nothing. She's tougher than most board members I've dealt with. She's had to be tough. Lost her mother at 3, spent the last 3 years watching her father work a job he's overqualified for, living in an apartment where she can hear the neighbors fighting through the walls. She's learned to protect the people she loves. She shouldn't have to. No, but she does anyway. Ethan looked out toward the playground, then back at Sophia. If I say yes to this, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, I need you to understand something. Maya comes first, always, every time. If there's a meeting and she's sick, I'm choosing her. If there's a deadline and she has a school play, I'm choosing her. If you need me to fly somewhere and it conflicts with her schedule, I'm choosing her. Are you prepared for that? Yes. You say that now, but when a crisis hits and I'm not available because I'm at a parent-teacher conference, you might feel differently. Then you'll have built systems that don't depend on one person being available 24/7. You'll have trained other people to handle crises. You'll have created redundancy and protocols and all the things good operations require, because that's what you're good at. Ethan tilted his head slightly, studying her. You've thought about this. I spent the entire flight from Denver thinking about this, thinking about what you'd say, what you'd need, what it would take to make this work. Because Chen was right. I need someone like you, not just to meet his conditions, but because I actually need the skills you have. I've been running a company on instinct and ambition, and it's worked until now, but it won't scale. I need someone who understands systems, who can build infrastructure, who can look at a weather pattern and predict what's coming before it hits. And you think I can do that? I know you can. I saw you do it. You predicted that fog down to the minute. You planned a backup route before anyone knew it was needed. You drove us through conditions that would have stopped most people, and you did it while keeping your daughter safe and comfortable. That's not luck. That's expertise. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Sophia could see him processing, weighing, calculating the risks against the possibilities. She forced herself not to fill the silence, not to push or persuade. She'd said what she needed to say. The rest was up to him. I need time to think about it, Ethan said finally, and I need to talk to Maya. Really talk to her. Make sure she understands what it would mean. More changes, new routines, me being busier, even with the flexibility you're offering. How much time do you need? A week? Maybe 2. Sophia felt panic spike. Chen's deadline is 30 days from acquisition close. I understand the timeline, but this isn't a decision I'm making under pressure. If you need an answer today, the answer is no. If you're willing to wait while I make the right choice for my daughter and myself, then I'll give you a real answer when I'm ready. It was a test, Sophia realized. A test of whether she actually meant what she said about priorities, about family, about building something different. 2 weeks, Sophia said. Take all the time you need. I'll send over a formal offer letter with everything we discussed. You can review it, share it with whoever you want, ask questions, request changes. And when you're ready, you'll tell me yes or no. And if I say no, then I'll thank you for considering it and figure out another way to meet Chen's conditions. But I'll do it without pressuring you or making you feel guilty, because you don't owe me anything. Ethan stood up, extending his hand. Sophia stood and shook it, feeling the calluses that came from work that wasn't purely administrative. The kind of hands that knew how to fix things instead of just managing people who fixed things. I'll call you in 2 weeks, Ethan said. One way or another, you'll have an answer. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for showing up alone. No team, no corporate pitch, just you. That mattered. Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She walked back to the rental car, aware of Ethan watching her go, aware of Maya's voice calling out something about the slide being slippery. She sat in the driver's seat and allowed herself 60 seconds to feel everything she'd been holding back, the fear that he'd say no, the understanding that she'd genuinely failed the first time they met, the strange grief of recognizing how empty her own life had become while she was busy calling it success. Then she started the car and drove back to Denver, back to the corporate world that suddenly felt less like home than it had 2 days ago. The next week was a nightmare of logistics and politics. Marcus formally resigned, sending a company-wide email about pursuing other opportunities that fooled absolutely no one. Richard Castellano scheduled his emergency board meeting for the following Monday, circulating an agenda that basically amounted to reasons Sophia should be removed as CEO. David Wu called her daily, sometimes twice daily, asking about Ethan's decision. I can't push him, Sophia explained for the 3rd time. He needs to make this choice on his own terms. We're running out of terms. Richard's got 3 board members ready to vote for your removal. If we don't have something concrete to show them, then we don't have something concrete. I'm not going to pressure Ethan into a decision that's wrong for his daughter just to save my job.
Even if losing your job means losing everything you've built?
Sophia thought about Ethan's words in the truck, about what mattered, about Maya drawing pictures while her father worked. Yeah, she said quietly. Even then. David was silent for a moment. Then, you've changed. I know. I'm not sure if it's going to save you or destroy you. Me either. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. By Sunday night, Sophia still hadn't heard from Ethan. She sat in her apartment, the acquisition documents spread across her dining room table, and accepted that she'd probably lose her position. Richard would make his case, the board would vote, and by Tuesday morning, someone else would be sitting in her office. And the strangest part was that it didn't feel like the end of the world anymore. Her phone rang at 7:30 p.m. Unknown number, but with a Cedar Hollow area code. She answered on the first ring. This is Sophia. It's Ethan. I'm sorry for calling on a Sunday night. It's fine. I was just sitting here. I wanted to let you know I've made my decision. Sophia's heart stopped. Okay. Maya and I talked about it a lot. We looked at the offer letter. We talked about what it would mean. We made a list of pros and cons. We even drew pictures of what our new life might look like. And she asked me one question that made the whole decision clear. What question? She asked if taking this job would make me happy. Not just whether it paid more money or gave us a better house or sounded impressive. She wanted to know if it would make me actually happy. Sophia waited, barely breathing. I thought about it for a long time, Ethan continued, and I realized that working at Cedar Hollow doesn't make me happy. It's safe, it's convenient, it keeps me close to Maya, but it's not fulfilling. I'm not using the skills I spent years developing. I'm not challenged. I'm not building anything. I'm just existing. Ethan, I'm saying yes, he said quietly. I'm saying yes to the job, to the challenge, to trying to build something different. But I need you to understand that I'm saying yes with conditions, with boundaries, with the understanding that if it doesn't work, I'll walk away without guilt. Sophia felt something break open in her chest. Relief, gratitude, hope, terror, all mixed together. I understand, and I promise you, we'll make it work. I need that in writing, not just the flexible schedule and the family room and the salary. I need the commitment that this company will actually be different, that we're building something where people don't have to choose between success and being present for their families. I'll put it in the employee handbook. I'll make it part of our culture. I'll fire anyone who pressures their teams to sacrifice family for deadlines. Good. Because I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing it for Amanda and everyone else who's been told they can't have both. I want to prove that's a lie. When can you start? I need to give Cedar Hollow 2 weeks' notice. They've been good to me, and I won't leave them without transition time. After that, I'm yours. 2 weeks. I can work with that. Sophia? Yeah? Don't make me regret this. I won't. I promise you I won't. The line went dead. Sophia sat in her apartment, phone in her hand, feeling like she'd just been given a second chance at something she'd failed the first time. The next morning, she walked into the board meeting with David Wu and her legal team. Richard Castellano was already there, looking smug, his presentation queued up on the conference room screen. The chairman called the meeting to order. Richard, you called this meeting. The floor is yours. Richard stood, radiating confidence. Thank you. I'll keep this brief. Over the past 3 months, we've seen a pattern of questionable judgment from our CEO. Overspending on the Meridian contract, logistics failures during the supply chain disruption, and most recently, the near disaster in Cedar Hollow that almost cost us the Stellaris acquisition. He clicked to his first slide showing a timeline of events. Ms. Bennett ignored expert weather warnings, delayed her team's departure, and then made the impulsive decision to use unauthorized transportation with an unvetted driver. This kind of reckless decision-making is exactly why I opposed her appointment from the beginning. Sophia sat quietly, letting him talk. David looked at her, concerned, but she gave a small shake of her head. Richard continued for 10 minutes, building his case, citing examples, questioning her experience and judgment. When he finished, he turned to the board with a grave expression. I'm proposing we remove Ms. Bennett from the CEO position, effective immediately, and begin a search for more experienced leadership. Someone who has the maturity and judgment this company needs to scale successfully. The chairman looked at Sophia. Ms. Bennett, would you like to respond?
Sophia stood, no presentation, no slides, just her and the truth. Richard is right about some things, she said. I did make mistakes in Cedar Hollow. I ignored a warning from someone who knew better than I did. I let pressure and fear override good judgment, and I treated a man with extraordinary expertise like he was worthless because he didn't fit my narrow definition of success. Richard's eyebrows rose. He clearly hadn't expected her to agree with him. But here's what Richard got wrong, Sophia continued. That situation didn't almost cost us the Stellaris acquisition. It secured it, because the man I dismissed, Ethan Brooks, ended up saving our timeline, impressing Robert Chen, and demonstrating exactly the kind of operational expertise our company lacks. And as of this morning, he's agreed to join our executive team as Director of Operations and Risk Management. She pulled out her phone and forwarded the signed offer letter to the board. This was Chen's condition for closing the deal. He wanted proof that I could recognize talent and build a team that values substance over appearances. Ethan Brooks is that proof. The board members were scrolling through their phones, reading the offer letter. The chairman looked up, his expression shifting from concern to interest. Chen made the acquisition contingent on hiring this person specifically? Yes. He investigated Ethan's background, found someone with 8 years of high-level operations experience who chose his family over his career, and decided that's exactly the kind of person our company needs. And he's accepted? As of last night, yes. Richard was turning red. This is absurd. You're hiring a ground operations coordinator from a regional airport to an executive position? I'm hiring a former operations supervisor with certifications in risk management, crisis coordination, and aviation systems who made a personal sacrifice to raise his daughter and is now ready to bring that expertise to our company. At a salary that's probably less than what you spend on golf club memberships, Richard. That got a few laughs from other board members. Richard's face went darker. Furthermore, Sophia continued, I'm proposing a company-wide policy change. No more expectation that employees sacrifice family time for career advancement. No more midnight emails demanding immediate responses. No more pressure to choose between being good parents and being good employees. We're building systems that don't require people to destroy their personal lives to prove their professional worth. The chairman leaned forward. That's a significant cultural shift. It's a necessary one. We're losing talented people because they're forced to choose. We're creating a culture where only workaholics succeed, and then wondering why our turnover is so high. Ethan Brooks is the first step toward fixing that. Richard stood up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's making sweeping policy changes based on one conversation with one person. This is impulsive, emotional decision-making. No, Sophia said calmly. This is learning from failure and choosing to do better. You can call it impulsive, or you can call it adaptation. But either way, the Stellaris acquisition closes in 3 weeks. We've secured the executive talent Chen required, and we're building a company culture that might actually retain the people we hire. If that's grounds for removal, then vote me out. But at least be honest about why you're doing it. The room went silent. The chairman looked around the table, reading faces, assessing the room. I'd like to call for a vote, Richard said. Noted, the chairman replied. But first, I'd like to ask Ms. Bennett one more question. This new hire, Brooks, is he actually qualified for this position, or is this just about meeting Chen's conditions? Sophia thought about Ethan predicting the fog, navigating through impossible conditions, building a life around what mattered, while most people just talked about priorities. He's the most qualified person I've ever met, she said quietly. Not because of his resume, though that's impressive, but because he understands what Chen understood, that long-term success isn't about quarterly earnings. It's about building something sustainable, something human. And that requires people who've actually lived life instead of just managing spreadsheets. The chairman nodded slowly. All in favor of removing Ms. Bennett from the CEO position? 3 hands went up. Richard's and 2 of his allies. All opposed? 5 hands, including the chairman's. Motion fails. Ms. Bennett remains CEO. This meeting is adjourned. Richard stood abruptly and walked out, his allies following. The remaining board members approached Sophia, offering congratulations, asking questions about the Stellaris deal. But Sophia barely heard them. She was thinking about a phone call she needed to make, about a man who'd said yes despite every reason to say no, about a 6-year-old girl who'd asked if it would make her father happy. That night she called Ethan.
It's done, she said when he answered. The board vote happened. I'm still CEO, and you officially start in 2 weeks. How did Richard take it? About as well as you'd expect, but he doesn't matter anymore. Everyone matters, Sophia, even the people who oppose you. You're already giving me advice? You're already listening to it? Sophia smiled. Yeah, I am. Good. Then maybe this will actually work. It will work. I'll make sure of it. We'll make sure of it, Ethan corrected. This isn't just your company anymore. It's all of ours. And for the first time in her career, Sophia understood that sharing responsibility wasn't weakness. It was the only way to build something that would last. 2 weeks passed faster than Sophia expected and slower than she could stand. She spent the time restructuring the executive team, documenting the new Family First policies, and fielding phone calls from Richard Castellano's allies, who kept asking if she was really serious about hiring someone from a regional airport. Completely serious, she told them each time, until the questions stopped coming. On a gray Monday morning in early November, Ethan Brooks walked into the company headquarters for his first day. Sophia had arrived an hour early to make sure everything was ready. The office she'd had set up for him, the family room adjacent to it where Maya could do homework or play, the introduction schedule she'd planned down to the minute. She was standing in the lobby when he arrived, and for a moment she barely recognized him. The faded airport jacket was gone, replaced by a simple button-down shirt and khakis. Professional, but not corporate, like someone who understood he didn't need to perform success to actually possess it. Beside him, holding his hand and looking simultaneously excited and terrified, was Maya, dressed in jeans and a purple sweatshirt with a unicorn on it. The stuffed rabbit was tucked under her other arm. "Good morning," Sophia said, walking over to them. She crouched down to Maya's level. "Hey, Maya, welcome to your dad's new job." "It's really tall," Maya said, staring up at the glass and steel atrium. "Are there elevators?" "Lots of them. Want to see?" Maya nodded, still gripping Ethan's hand like it was the only solid thing in an uncertain world. Sophia stood and led them toward the elevator bank, trying to ignore the stares from other employees arriving for work. The CEO walking in with the new hire and his 6-year-old daughter wasn't exactly standard corporate protocol. They rode up to the 8th floor in silence, Maya's eyes wide as she watched the numbers climb. When the doors opened, Sophia led them down the hallway to a corner office with windows on 2 sides. "This is yours," Sophia said to Ethan. "And through here," she opened a connecting door, "this is Maya's space." The family room was nothing like the rest of the corporate office. Sophia had worked with Jennifer to design it: beanbag chairs, bookshelves stocked with kids' books, a small desk with art supplies, a tablet loaded with educational games, and in the corner, a comfortable couch where Maya could nap if needed. Maya's eyes went enormous. "This is all for me?" "All for you," Sophia confirmed. "Your dad will be right next door working, but you've got your own space to do whatever you need to do. Can the bunny stay here too?" "The bunny is absolutely welcome." Maya walked into the room slowly, touching things like she was afraid they might disappear. She set the rabbit carefully on one of the beanbag chairs, then turned back to Ethan. "Daddy, this is the nicest place I've ever seen." Ethan's throat worked. "Yeah, sweetheart, it is." Sophia watched father and daughter taking in the space she'd created for them, and felt something shift in her chest. This was what success actually looked like. Not the corner office or the executive title or the acquisition deal. This was it. A 6-year-old feeling safe enough to put down her rabbit. A father knowing his daughter would be okay while he worked. "I'll give you 2 some time to get settled," Sophia said quietly. "First meeting is at 10. Just introductions to the leadership team. Maya's welcome to come if she wants, or she can hang out here. Whatever feels right." "Thank you," Ethan said, and the words carried weight that went beyond the office and the amenities. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't met everyone else." Sophia left them and walked back to her own office, where Jennifer was waiting with coffee and a concerned expression. "The natives are restless," Jennifer said without preamble. "Half the executive team is confused about why we're hiring someone from outside the industry. The other half is confused about why there's a child's playroom on the executive floor." "Good. Let them be confused. We're doing introductions in 20 minutes. Is everyone assembled?" "Everyone except Amanda. She's running late. Something about her daughter's school." "Tell her to take her time. We'll wait." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. The old Sophia would have started without her and made a pointed comment about punctuality. The old Sophia was an idiot about a lot of things. At exactly 10:03 a.m., Amanda rushed into the conference room, breathless and apologetic. "I'm so sorry. My daughter forgot her science project, and I had to run it to school before—" "It's fine," Sophia interrupted. "Is she okay?" Amanda blinked, clearly expecting criticism. She's fine. Thank you." "Good. Have a seat." The conference room held 8 people: Sophia, Jennifer, Amanda, David from legal, 3 division directors, and noticeably absent, Marcus. In his place sat Ethan Brooks, looking calm and slightly amused by the corporate formality of it all. "Everyone, this is Ethan Brooks, our new Director of Operations and Risk Management. Ethan comes to us with extensive experience in aviation operations, crisis coordination, and systems analysis. He'll be overseeing operational infrastructure across all divisions and building out our risk assessment protocols. Ethan, these are the people who actually make this company work." Sophia went around the table with introductions. Most people were polite, some were curious, and one of the division directors, a man named Frank Morrison, who'd been with the company for 15 years, was openly skeptical. "No offense," Frank said, "but I'm having trouble understanding how someone from airport ground operations translates to corporate risk management. These are pretty different worlds." Ethan didn't flinch. "You're right, they are different. But risk assessment is risk assessment regardless of industry. In aviation, you're constantly evaluating weather systems, equipment failures, human factors, and logistical complications. You're building redundant systems because lives depend on getting it right. In corporate operations, you're evaluating market conditions, supply chain vulnerabilities, personnel risks, and project complications. The principles are identical. Identify potential failure points, build contingencies, and create systems that don't collapse when one thing goes wrong. Frank leaned back in his chair. "Okay, but have you ever managed a corporate division?" "No, but I've managed operations for a mid-size airline with 300 daily flights and 6,000 employees. I've coordinated emergency responses when equipment failed at 30,000 feet. I've built protocols that kept people safe during situations where one mistake could kill everyone involved. So no, I haven't managed a corporate division, but I've managed higher stakes situations than most people in this room will ever face." The conference room went quiet. Frank's skepticism shifted to something more like respect. "Fair enough," he said. Sophia let Ethan take the lead for the rest of the meeting, watching him explain his initial assessment plans, asking questions about each division's biggest operational challenges, taking notes in a worn notebook that looked like it had survived years of actual use. He didn't try to impress anyone or prove himself. He just worked the problem like someone who'd spent his career solving problems that actually mattered. The meeting ran 90 minutes. When it ended, Ethan excused himself to check on Maya. Sophia stayed behind with Jennifer and Amanda. "Well," Jennifer said, "he's definitely not Marcus." "Thank everything that's holy for that," Amanda added. "Did you see how he handled Frank? No ego, no defensiveness, just facts. When was the last time we had an executive who could do that?" "Never," Sophia said. "We've never had that." Over the next month, Ethan proved what Sophia had suspected, that expertise translated across industries when the fundamentals were sound. He identified bottlenecks in their supply chain that had been causing delays for months. He restructured their project management protocols to build in contingencies instead of assuming everything would go perfectly. He created risk assessment matrices that actually made sense instead of just looking impressive in presentations. And he did it all while leaving at 4 p.m. every single day to pick up Maya from the family room, walking out past executives who were just starting their second round of meetings. At first, people whispered. Sophia heard the comments about special treatment, about double standards, about whether someone who left at 4 could really be committed to the company. Then Frank Morrison's division hit a major crisis. A supplier bankruptcy threatened to shut down their entire production line, and Frank was ready to panic. Ethan spent 3 hours on a Saturday morning with Maya playing quietly in the family room, mapping out alternate suppliers, restructuring the timeline, and building a contingency plan that saved the project. The whispers stopped after that. 6 weeks after Ethan started, Sophia walked into the family room one afternoon to find Maya sitting at the small desk, working intently on something with markers and construction paper. The bunny sat propped against a stack of books, apparently supervising. "What are you working on?" Sophia asked. Maya looked up, marker in hand. A picture for you, for your office. For my office? Daddy says you don't have any pictures on your walls except boring business stuff, so I'm making you something better. Sophia sat down in one of the beanbag chairs. Can I see it when you're done? You can see it now, but it's not finished yet. Maya turned the paper around. It was a drawing of a road, 2 parallel lines with dashes down the middle. On one side of the road were dark clouds and lightning bolts. On the other side was a sun and what might have been flowers or possibly explosions. It was hard to tell. And in the middle of the road was a truck with 2 stick figures inside. That's the foggy road, Maya explained. The one Daddy drove you on when you needed help, see? This side is the scary fog, and this side is where you were trying to go. And this is Daddy and you in the truck. It's beautiful, Sophia said, and meant it. It's not done yet. I have to add the words on top. Maya picked up a purple marker and carefully wrote across the top of the page in letters that were more enthusiastic than accurate. Take the safe road. She held it up proudly. See? It's to remind you that sometimes the safe road isn't the easy road. Sometimes it's the hard road that someone smart knows how to drive on. Sophia felt her eyes burning. Where did you learn that? From Daddy. He says that all the time. He says lots of people take the easy road because it looks nice, but then they get lost. The safe road is the one where you listen to people who know better, even if they don't look important. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds came wisdom that most adults spent lifetimes avoiding. Sophia took the drawing carefully, like it was something precious and fragile, which it was. Thank you, Maya. I'm going to hang this right next to my desk. Really, even though it's just a kid drawing? Especially because it's a kid drawing. It's going to remind me of something really important. What? That the best advice doesn't always come from people in expensive suits. Maya nodded seriously, as if this was obvious. The bunny says that expensive suits are just clothes. They don't make people smart. The bunny is absolutely right. That night, Sophia had the drawing professionally framed, not because it needed to be professional, but because she wanted it to last. She hung it on the wall directly across from her desk, where she'd see it every time she looked up from her computer. The Stellaris acquisition closed on schedule. Robert Chen flew in for the final signing, and when he toured the offices, Sophia made sure he met Ethan and Maya. So you're the famous Ethan Brooks, Chen said, shaking his hand. The man who made this whole deal possible. I just drove through some fog, Ethan replied. Ms. Bennett did everything else. No, Chen said, looking at Sophia. You showed her what actually matters. That's worth more than driving. Chen noticed Maya's drawing on Sophia's wall and asked about it. Sophia explained, watching Chen's expression shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. Take the safe road, Chen read aloud. That's good advice for business. It's good advice for everything, Sophia said. 3 months after Ethan started, the company held its quarterly all-hands meeting. Sophia stood at the front of the room looking at 200 employees, feeling the weight of what she needed to say. We've made a lot of changes in the past few months, she began. New policies, new personnel, new ways of thinking about how we work. And I know some of you have been skeptical. Some of you have wondered if we're still serious about success, or if we've gone soft. She let that hang in the air for a moment. I want to tell you a story. 3 months ago, I stood in an airport and dismissed a man's expertise because he didn't look like what I thought success should look like. He warned me about dangerous weather, and I ignored him because he was wearing a work jacket and standing next to his daughter. I judged him based on appearances instead of listening to what he was actually saying. Sophia saw Ethan in the back of the room, standing beside Jennifer. He gave a small shake of his head. She didn't need to do this, but she continued anyway. That mistake almost cost me everything. It almost cost my team their careers. It almost cost us the biggest deal in company history. But that same man I'd dismissed decided to help us anyway. He drove us through fog that would have stopped most people, got us where we needed to go, and never once made me feel like I deserved the humiliation I'd earned. The room was completely silent. That man is now our director of operations, and he's the reason half the improvements we've made this quarter were even possible. But more importantly, he taught me something about what this company needs to become. We need to be a place where people don't have to choose between being good at their jobs and being present for their families. Where success isn't measured by how many hours you work, but by what you actually accomplish. Where expertise is valued regardless of what someone looks like or where they came from. What was right, Sophia looked directly at Ethan. We're building something different here, something that actually works for real people with real lives. And if that makes us soft in some people's eyes, then I guess we're soft. But we're also profitable, growing, and actually retaining talented people instead of burning them out. She turned back to the larger audience. So here's the new deal. Work your hours, do excellent work, and then go home to your families. Don't apologize for leaving on time. Don't feel guilty about taking your kids to doctor's appointments. Don't sacrifice your personal lives to prove your professional worth. Because I tried that version of success, and it was empty. This version, the one where we're all human beings instead of productivity units, this is what we're building. The applause started slowly, then built. Sophia saw Amanda wiping her eyes, saw Frank Morrison nodding, saw dozens of faces looking relieved, like they'd been waiting years for someone to say out loud what they'd all been thinking. After the meeting, Ethan found Sophia in her office. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Tell everyone that story."
Yeah, I did. Because if we're going to actually change the culture, people need to know why it matters. They need to hear the truth instead of corporate platitudes. Still, that took guts. I learned from the best. Sophia gestured at Maya's drawing on the wall. "Your daughter is a better teacher than most business schools."
Ethan smiled. "She has her moments. Speaking of which, she wants to know if you'll come to her school play next week. They're doing some kind of forest animal thing, and she's playing a rabbit. She thought you should see it since you like her bunny so much." Sophia felt something catch in her throat. "She wants me to come to her play?" "Only if you're free, no pressure." "What day?" "Thursday at 2 p.m. Thursday at 2 p.m., Sophia had a standing meeting with the finance division to review quarterly projections. It was on her calendar, had been scheduled for 6 weeks, and involved 8 people's coordinated schedules. The old Sophia would have said she couldn't make it, would have sent a nice note and maybe a gift card, would have prioritized the meeting because that's what executives did. The new Sophia looked at Ethan and said, "I'll be there. Text me the address." She rescheduled the finance meeting. Nobody complained. In fact, when she explained why, that she was attending her director of operations' daughter's school play, several people said they wished more executives made choices like that. The school play was exactly what Sophia expected. Enthusiastic children in homemade costumes, forgotten lines, at least 3 kids picking their noses on stage, and Maya in rabbit ears that kept sliding sideways, delivering her single line with intense concentration. "I am a rabbit, and I live in the forest." Sophia sat in the folding chair between Ethan and a row of other parents, watching this chaotic display of childhood, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of stress, but the presence of something that actually mattered. After the play, Maya ran up to them, rabbit ears askew, face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me? Did you see my line?" "You were perfect," Sophia said. "Best rabbit in the whole forest." "Did you take pictures?" "So many pictures." Maya threw her arms around Sophia's waist in an unexpected hug, and Sophia froze for a moment before hugging back. When was the last time someone had hugged her spontaneously, without wanting something, without performing gratitude for professional reasons? She couldn't remember. "Thank you for coming," Maya whispered. "Daddy said you're really busy and important, but you came anyway." "I'll always come when you invite me," Sophia said, and meant it. 6 months after Ethan started, Richard Castellano resigned from the board. His resignation letter was brief and professional, citing a desire to focus on other ventures. But Sophia heard through Jennifer that he'd been quietly pushed out by other board members who were tired of his constant opposition to changes that were clearly working. The company's retention rate improved by 40%. Project completion times dropped by 25%. Employee satisfaction scores, which Sophia had never bothered measuring before, were the highest they'd been in company history. And on a warm afternoon in May, Sophia sat in her office reviewing acquisition proposals when Ethan knocked on her doorframe. "Got a minute?" "Always." "What's up?" Ethan came in and sat down across from her desk. "Maya and I are moving this weekend. Found a house with a yard like I wanted. It's about 20 minutes from here, good school district, quiet neighborhood." "That's great. Need any help with the move?" "Actually, Maya wanted to know if you'd come to the housewarming. Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and some of the neighbors. But she made me promise to ask." Sophia smiled. "Tell her I wouldn't miss it. She also wanted me to give you something." Ethan pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Sophia. It was another drawing, this one showing a house with a yard, flowers that might have been roses or possibly tennis balls, and 3 stick figures, one tall, one small, and one medium-sized with what appeared to be a briefcase. Across the top, in Maya's careful printing, "New beginnings are good." "She's been practicing her writing," Ethan said. "Wanted to make sure you could read it this time." "It's perfect." Sophia looked up at him. "How are you doing?" "Really? Is this working the way you needed it to work?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "It's harder than I expected in some ways, easier in others. The work challenges me in ways I'd forgotten I needed, but I also still make it to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every bedtime. So yeah, it's working, because you kept your promises. You're the one doing the hard part, balancing everything. We're all doing the hard part, you included. I've watched you turn down late meetings, push back on weekend conference calls, actually enforce the boundaries you set. That's not easy when you're used to being available 24/7. I learned from the best, Sophia said again, and then, because it needed to be said, thank you for taking the risk, for trusting me when I hadn't earned it yet, for showing me what actually matters. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but I wouldn't have figured it out in time to save what I was building. You gave me that. Ethan stood to leave, then paused at the door. Sophia? Yeah? That drawing Maya gave you, the one about the safe road, she told me something about it that I don't think she told you. What? She said she drew it because she wanted you to remember that you didn't have to know everything to be a good leader. You just had to know who to listen to when you didn't know the answers. Sophia felt tears threatening and forced them back. 6 years old and she's wiser than most people I know. She's had to be. But she's also had the space to be a kid again, thanks to this job, this structure, this chance you took on us. So the thanks goes both ways. After Ethan left, Sophia sat in her office looking at both drawings, the original Foggy Road and the new house with new beginnings. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in that airport, so desperate to prove herself that she'd dismissed the exact wisdom she needed. She thought about all the things she'd learned since then, that success without humanity was just ambition dressed up as achievement, that being vulnerable enough to admit mistakes was harder and more valuable than pretending perfection, that the people you overlooked often carried the answers you were desperately seeking. Her phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. Just left my son's baseball game. He hit a double. First time I've made it to a game all season. Thank you for building a company where that's actually possible. Then Jennifer. Heading out for my anniversary dinner. In past jobs, I'd be stuck in a meeting right now. This feels like working for humans instead of robots. Then Frank Morrison. New protocols caught a supply chain issue before it became a crisis. Brooks was right about redundancy planning. Guy's a genius. Sophia read the messages and understood something fundamental. Changing a company's culture wasn't about policy memos or mission statements. It was about making different choices consistently until different choices became normal. It was about believing that people could be excellent at their jobs and present for their families. It was about building systems that worked for human beings instead of requiring human beings to break themselves fitting into systems. It was about taking the safe road even when it looked harder than the easy one. 1 year after that foggy night in Cedar Hollow, Sophia stood in front of the entire company at the annual meeting and announced their strongest financial year in company history. Record revenue, record growth, record retention, record employee satisfaction. We did this together, she told the room. Not by working longer hours or sacrificing more, but by working smarter, supporting each other, and remembering that we're human beings building something for other human beings. She looked at Ethan, standing in the back with Maya beside him. Maya waved, and Sophia waved back. Someone once told me that mattering has nothing to do with titles or salary or impressive deals. It has everything to do with who's waiting for you when you come home. I didn't understand that when I first heard it, but I understand it now. Sophia gestured at the room full of people. Every person in this room matters, not because of your productivity metrics or your project completion rates, but because you're human beings with families and dreams and lives beyond these walls. And if we've built something here that honors that, then we've built something actually worth celebrating. The applause was genuine this time, not the polite corporate clapping of obligation, but the real response of people who felt seen. After the meeting, Maya ran up to Sophia with something in her hands. A new drawing, of course. "This one's for your desk," Maya announced. "Not the wall, the desk. So you see it every day when you're working." Sophia took the paper. This drawing showed two figures, one tall in a suit, one small in what appeared to be a cape. They were holding hands and smiling. Above them, in capital letters, "Leaders listen." "Do you like it?" Maya asked anxiously. "I love it," Sophia said. "It's going right next to my computer. I'll see it every single day." "Good, because Daddy says the most important thing about being a leader is remembering to listen to people who know things you don't know, and I wanted you to remember that forever." Sophia crouched down to Maya's level. "Can I tell you a secret?" Maya's eyes went wide. "Yes. You and your daddy taught me more about being a good leader than anyone else I've ever met. And I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to be as wise as you already are." Maya considered this seriously. "The bunny says you're doing pretty good already, but there's always room for improvement." The bunny is absolutely right. That evening, Sophia left the office at 5 p.m., not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She drove to a park near her apartment and sat on a bench, watching the sunset, thinking about everything that had changed in a year. She'd lost Marcus, but gained Ethan. She'd nearly lost her job, but found her purpose. She'd started out trying to prove she was tough enough, smart enough, impressive enough to deserve success, and ended up learning that success without humanity was just numbers on a spreadsheet. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Maya wants to know if you're coming to her birthday party next month. Fair warning, there will be a bouncy castle and at least 20 screaming 7-year-olds. Sophia typed back, "I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world. She'll be thrilled. Also, thanks for everything this year, for taking the chance, for keeping your promises, for actually building what you said you'd build. Thank you for showing me what was possible, for being patient while I figured out how to be better. We're all just figuring it out as we go. The trick is being willing to learn." Sophia set down her phone and looked at the sunset, at the sky turning colors she rarely took time to notice, and thought about the safe road that had looked so dangerous a year ago. The road that required admitting you were wrong, accepting help from people you'd dismissed, rebuilding everything you thought you knew about success. The road that led here, to a company that actually worked for human beings, to relationships that mattered beyond quarterly earnings, to a 6-year-old's wisdom hanging on your office wall. Somewhere in Cedar Hollow, that fog was probably rolling into the valley again, making the runway disappear, grounding flights, and forcing people to find alternate routes. But Sophia wasn't afraid of fog anymore. She'd learned to listen to people who knew how to navigate it. She'd learned that the safe road wasn't always the easy road, but it was always the one that got you home to what mattered. And she'd learned that sometimes the people you underestimate end up saving you from yourself. That was worth more than any billion-dollar deal could ever be. The sun disappeared below the horizon, and Sophia stood up, heading toward her car, toward home, toward whatever came next. She was ready for it now. Finally, actually ready.